My husband, Charles, always says that anything I buy also belongs to him. If I don't agree, he says we should get divorced. Charles often takes things from me for no good reason. He even tries to give things I bought for my parents to his parents, just to look good. But that's not right. When I told him the truth about it, he looked shocked. Before I married Charles, my grandparents gave me a gift, real estate. I told them I would use it to help Charles and me in the future, but they warned me to keep it a secret. They didn't want Charles to know I had passive income and enough money to live on. Even though I felt sorry for Charles, I decided to follow my grandparents' advice. After my grandfather passed away, I was living with Charles when something happened. One day, I noticed that $10,000 was missing from the account I used to save money for living expenses. It was a joint account that Charles and I shared, mainly for the money he contributed to the house. I didn't remember taking that much money out, so it had to be Charles. When he came home, I asked him about it. "Hey, $10,000 is missing from our account. Do you know what happened?" I asked. He said, "I lent it to my mom. She was in some kind of trouble." I was upset. "And you didn't think to tell me about it?" Charles seemed unconcerned. "It's my money, we have savings, so it's fine, don't worry about it." I said, "If Lisa, his mom, was in trouble, I understand, but you should have told me. This account is for both of us." I didn't mind helping his mom, but withdrawing such a large amount without telling me bothered me. When I expressed my frustration, Charles got annoyed and quickly left for the bathroom. I felt bad about it. He hadn't acted like this when we first got married. He used to listen to me. Is this how things change in marriage? I wondered. A few days later, I went to my in-laws' house to drop off a package that was sent to our place by mistake. I planned to leave quickly, but they insisted I come in for tea. While I was there, I noticed expensive items, fancy cosmetics, designer clothes, and health products. They were gifts from my wonderful son, my mother-in-law said. I felt uncomfortable. Charles had told me he lent money to his mom because she was in trouble, but now I saw how they were spending it on luxurious items. As I sat there without smiling, my in-laws suddenly became serious and said, as if threatening me, "My son is so kind and thoughtful. What about you?" "Yes, as his wife. Are you treating him well?" "I heard that you're upset with him for lending me money," my mother-in-law added, making it clear that Charles had made himself out to be the victim. I finally understood. Charles had told his parents that he was being blamed for doing something good, which is why they were looking at me like I was the bad one. The more I thought about it, the more I grew tired of both my in-laws and Charles. I never imagined being treated this badly and neglected. Eventually, I started to seriously consider divorce. I thought that if I divorced Charles, I could go back to my parents' house and use my savings to rebuild it. My parents' house is over 30 years old and is too big for them now that my brother and I have moved out. They had some small modifications made to help them, but it's still too difficult for them to manage. A smaller, one-story house would be much better for them. I called my parents to tell them I was thinking about divorcing Charles and rebuilding their house. To my surprise, they weren't upset about the divorce. They were actually happy about the idea of rebuilding the house and told me to tell them more. "I'm so glad you're planning to rebuild it for us. Thank you. Even if we don't live there for long, it's fine because you're using your own savings to do it." I felt encouraged by their words and started planning the rebuilding process, taking it step by step. Just as I was waiting to hear back from the construction company, Charles confronted me. "How dare you use our savings to build a house without telling me?" he yelled, banging his fist on the table. He kept yelling, not caring about how I felt. "I'm building it for my parents to live in," I said calmly. "No, that's impossible. You used our shared money, so my parents should be able to live there," he argued. "Are you planning to squeeze 4 people into a small house?" I asked. He slammed the table again, screaming, "Just give me the house." I realized if I hadn't already told him about my passive income, he would have gotten even angrier when he found out. So, I decided to tell him the truth. "I have passive income from the real estate my grandparents gave me. I've been using that to save up for this project. So I didn't use any of our shared money," I explained. I felt guilty for breaking my promise to my grandparents, but Charles didn't calm down. He slammed the table harder, his anger growing. "What kind of wife hides her income like that? You protect your money while using mine," he shouted. Seeing his red face, I started to understand why my grandparents told me to keep my income a secret. Maybe they had already realized what kind of person Charles was. I'll take the house as alimony, he said, because the house you built as my wife belongs to me too. My husband, Charles, always insisted, I'm the head of the family, and if you don't do what I say, I'll divorce you. His words left me feeling nothing but frustration. How had I been living with him without realizing what kind of man he was? I had always planned to use my passive income only when we couldn't rely on Charles's earnings anymore. If I got sick or injured, I would use it to help us get by. I had intended to save it for our future together and tell him when the time came, but now, I no longer wanted to spend that money on him. Fine, go ahead, I said. I left the house, not wanting to be around Charles. I went to a business hotel for the night to cool off, planning to return the next day. When I came back, Charles was waiting for me with a smirk. He handed me divorce papers that were already filled out. You're lying about your passive income, right? You've been taking money from our shared savings, haven't you? He accused. I was confused. I had told him the truth, and I hadn't lied at all. I'm telling you the truth. I have passive income, I said. Charles just laughed and pushed the divorce papers at me. You can't live without me, he said, then added, you'll let me know when we can move in, okay? I'm going out for a drink. He patted me on the shoulder and left, acting as if nothing had changed. That was when I truly understood who Charles was. He had never respected me, and he never had. I packed my things, filled out the divorce papers, and left. I decided to stay with my parents for now and explain everything to them. They understood, and we agreed to stay together until the house was finished. The next day, I saw that my phone was filled with calls from Charles. I answered his call, hoping this would be the last time we'd talk. Hello? I answered. Hey, all your stuff is gone, he said impatiently. We're getting a divorce, so you can use the empty spaces however you want. I was confused. He was the one who wanted the divorce, so why was he panicking now? Huh? I said. I won't be coming back, so do what you want with the space, he said. I think he finally understood that I had passive income. After a moment of silence, he said in a sweet voice I'd never heard before, can you let my parents live in the new house? I don't mind living with your parents, just please let them have the house. I was stunned. I told you before, it's a small one-story house, I reminded him. Please, he begged, I want to surprise my parents with a house. His words shocked me. He was asking me to give his parents a house I had worked hard to build for my own parents, and call it a surprise? That was crazy. You don't even care about the savings, do you? I said. You never understood how much I struggled to make ends meet and save money. You just waste money and leave all the problems for others. Then you want to show off to your parents, acting like you did everything yourself. But I built it for my parents, I added, frustrated. Charles went quiet. I was fed up. It was clear that he was just trying to use me and take credit for everything. He had no right to take the house I built with my own savings and give it to his parents as if it were his gift. I couldn't let him take advantage of me anymore. The house was for my parents, not his. I would never let him use it to show off. I rejected Charles's request one last time, and he started yelling even louder. But husbands and wives are supposed to help each other. I'll tell them you built the house, please? We're not married anymore, I said. We're strangers now. I already filed for divorce. The day Charles handed me the divorce papers, I had already submitted them to the city office. He had wanted the divorce so badly, and I felt like I needed to leave him as soon as possible. I was already in the process of changing all the paperwork back to how it was before we were married. Charles sounded surprised. You really filed it? Why are you so surprised when you were the one who asked for the divorce? He even suggested, let's start over. Let's try again and be a good couple this time. How could he say that after everything? This was the man who spent our savings on his mother, threatened me with divorce, and made fun of me until the end. I didn't want to be with him anymore. No thanks. Please tell your parents I said goodbye, I said as I hung up the phone. The next day, I got more messages and voicemails from Charles, begging me to come back. He claimed he loved me, but I knew he was only after my money. To completely cut ties, I blocked all contact with him and his family. The house was finally rebuilt, and my parents and I moved into our new home. We were living comfortably, and I felt at peace. Later, I met a mutual friend who knew Charles, and I told her we were divorced. She shared what had happened to him and his family after we split. It turned out that Charles had quit his job suddenly, claiming he no longer needed to work because he had real estate. The company tried to reach him, but when he offered to withdraw his resignation, it was too late. His bosses were angry that he left without notice, and the company soon found out that his real estate wasn't his, but his wife's income. They refused to rehire him. Charles had made fun of my passive income, saying it was a lie, but then he tried to use it to his advantage, even showing off to his parents by offering them a house. He never thought about me or our future. Now, when I think of him, I feel nothing but relief. I heard that Charles moved back in with his parents, but they were apparently very hard on him. He's struggling to find a new job because of his resignation. He's getting exactly what he deserves. As for me, I'm living with my parents in the house I built. I have a job I've always wanted, and I'm enjoying life. I saved my passive income for Charles and our future, but now I'll use it to support the people who've always supported me.
My name's Jennifer, and I'm 32 years old. I work in a busy city called New York, where people believe in working hard to succeed. My husband, Donnie, is 30 and works too. We got married 2 years ago. Donnie might seem a bit unreliable sometimes, but he's actually really kind. He's good at helping out with chores around the house. I'm a career-focused woman. I love my job and feel proud when I do well. In my job, if you work hard, you can move up. But there's a downside. Sometimes they might ask you to move to a different place. And if you want to have a baby, there's no rule about taking time off. Many women quit their jobs when they get married or have kids. I used to think the same way. I wanted to focus on my career and didn't plan on getting married. When Donnie asked me to marry him, I said no at first. I told him, I love my job. I'm in charge of a team now, but I want to go even higher. I can't imagine settling down or having kids. But Donnie understood. He promised we'd share the chores and wouldn't have kids. Eventually, I agreed to marry him because he was so understanding. Both Donnie and I work, so sometimes we don't split the chores exactly as we planned. But we help each other out, and I think we do pretty well. Sometimes my in-laws make annoying comments like, "You should focus more on your home than your job," or, "When are you having kids?" But it's not too bothersome because Donnie always supports me. Living with Donnie has been nice, and I've learned to enjoy being married. Then, one day, my boss, who's the head of our department, called me about a possible move to a different office. He said, "What do you think? You'd work at a branch office for a while, but you'd come back here after 2 years. You'd have a good position there, and if you do well, you'll get promoted when you come back. You might even become the first woman to lead a department. It's a pretty good opportunity, right?" Accepting or refusing this move could decide if I'll get promoted at my job. Everyone who's become a boss or higher has done a move like this. If I say no, I might stay in my current job, but I could also get moved to a less important position. Before I got married, I would have taken this chance right away, but now, being married made me feel hesitant. I told my boss, "Thank you for thinking of me. Personally, I'm interested, but since it involves moving, I want to talk to my husband first. Can I give you an answer after that?" He said, "All right, you're married. You can choose to go alone or move with your family. Talk it over. I'm hoping for a yes." When I got home, I talked to Donnie about it. I can offer a job transfer. I might have to move to the countryside, but if I do well for 2 years, I can come back here. And if I keep doing well, I could get promoted. "I want to take this offer if you're okay with it, Donnie. We can move together, or I can go alone. What do you think?" At first, Donnie was surprised, but then he thought about it and said, "If you take this transfer, Jennifer, your dream could come true, right? I can't move with you because I have my job here, but don't worry about me. Go for it." With Donnie's support, I told the company I'd go for the transfer alone and started discussing the details. They agreed to pay for my moving costs and offered some good benefits, like considering my travel days as work days. So I decided to accept the transfer to the branch office. I got the official transfer order and chose to live in a company apartment, which was affordable. On moving day, the movers had already taken my stuff, and Donnie came to say goodbye at the station. "Thanks for seeing me off. I'll keep in touch, and I'll try to come home as much as I can." "Yeah, I'll be waiting. But remember, even though you're working from afar, don't overdo it," Donnie said. "You too," I replied. "It's time. Take care, okay? I'm heading out," Donnie said as he left. And that's how my life as a remote worker began. I planned to come home during holidays and quieter times, but things got rocky at the branch office right after I arrived. I won't take orders from a woman. How can I trust someone new like her? One of the local employees complained. I faced resistance from the staff there. They spread rumors about me, didn't listen to my instructions, and even ignored my calls. And then things got worse when a project I was overseeing had a big mistake because one of my team members deliberately kept me out of the loop. The subordinate who was responsible looked really shocked, but as the boss, it was my job to handle it. I had to fix the problem, apologize, and not only get things back on track, but also mend relationships with my team. My boss saw how tough things were for me and gave me some advice. I've been through a transfer too, so I get it. It might not seem fair, but you can't just push your way through. It's important to communicate well, understand others, and build relationships horizontally. So I followed my boss's advice. I spent more time getting to know everyone at the branch and even joined the neighborhood association since the company's housing was part of it. Before I knew it, I was so busy that I couldn't find time for myself, let alone go back home where my husband was waiting. I kept in touch with him, but after a few months of remote work, it got hard to reach him at night. I'm working late every day because work is tough. I get tired and end up falling asleep. As my husband made excuses and I got busier with work, I didn't suspect anything and focused more on my job. Once during a slow work period on a long holiday, I decided to go back home to New York on short notice. But I couldn't reach my husband by phone or text, so I returned from my remote work without telling him. When I opened the door to our home after a long time away, something felt strange. Then a woman I didn't recognize rushed to the door, saying, "Justin, welcome back. If I knew you were coming home early, I would have prepared." We both froze, staring at each other in shock. Finally, the woman spoke up, Sorry, but who are you? And who are you? This is my house." "Wait, what? I live here." After arguing and getting nowhere, we decided to check the house number outside. To my surprise, it matched the custom nameplate I had ordered. The key works, and the nameplate's right. "This is my house. I'm going in," I insisted. "Wait, what? Stop." Ignoring her protests, I pushed past her and entered the house. Inside, everything had changed. The curtains, the furniture, all of it. There was a photo of my husband and the woman at a theme park, mugs I'd never seen before, and unfamiliar toothbrushes and skincare items in the bathroom. The bed linens were different, and the wardrobe held only the woman's clothes. My husband's stuff was hidden away in a back room. As I stood there in shock, I heard the front door open. "I'm home." "Oh, Lola, did you invite a friend over?" "Justin, thank goodness you're back." This woman just barged into our house. The man the woman called Justin was definitely my husband, Donnie. Seeing me, he looked surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Donnie, why is she calling you Justin? Can you explain what's happening?" I asked him. "What do you mean? This is Justin, right?" "Justin." "Well, actually," my husband seemed flustered under our questioning. "Lola, his real name is Donnie. Isn't that what's on your driver's license? And I'm Donnie's wife, Jennifer." "That's not true. He told me he was divorced." "Donnie, you need to explain everything clearly," I insisted. "Jennifer, you were gone for so long, and I was lonely. So I thought I'd try a dating app, and that's where I met Lola," Donnie explained. "So Justin is your fake name on the dating app?" I questioned. "No, it's not like that. I was worried if my real name came out. It might cause problems, so I used a different first name but kept my last name," Donnie clarified. "And why did you lie about being divorced?" I pressed further. Lola's profile said she'd never dated a man before and was serious about finding someone for marriage. It struck a chord with me, so I lied about being divorced to win her over. "We started living together," Donnie admitted. "Why would you do something like that?" I asked, puzzled. At that moment, my husband began justifying his actions defiantly. "It's because you're always away for work. It's natural for a man to want companionship. We've been living separate lives because of your job and the long hours. I just wanted a warm home where my wife would be there with dinner when I got back." I was shocked to hear this, as I always thought my husband understood and supported my career. But that doesn't excuse what you did. What you did was wrong. If you wanted to be with someone else, you should have ended our marriage first. Why didn't you do the right thing? I cared about both of you. I never wanted to leave either of you. After everything you've done, I was bound to find out when I came back. It's unbelievable that you thought you could deceive me like this. Well, it's your fault for not keeping your promise and coming back. If you had, I wouldn't have even thought about cheating. What on earth? I've told you how hard work has been, and you still did this. I yelled, feeling a mix of anger and hurt. Our argument escalated into a shouting match, with the woman my husband cheated with standing there, looking stunned. She realized she'd been tricked by a married man into his mess. So everything was a lie. You played me for a fool. I'm leaving right now, she exclaimed. Lola, wait, it's not what you think, my husband pleaded, but it was too late. My husband tried to stop the other woman from leaving, but she brushed him off, repulsed. Don't touch me with your filthy hands. I can't believe a single word you say, she cursed before storming out, packing her things and leaving for her parents' house. Furious with my husband, I decided to take action against his betrayal. Gathering evidence, I brought it back with me when I returned to work. The first thing I did was hire a detective to look into my husband's mistress. The investigation revealed that she was the daughter of an executive at a company partnered with my husband's workplace. I had a lawyer send proof of the affair to both my husband's home and the other woman's parents. When my husband received the documents, he protested, saying he didn't want a divorce. So I prepared for a tough legal battle, even considering going to court. The other woman's family contacted my lawyer, and we arranged to meet at their office. They apologized to me, and the other woman admitted her wrongdoing. We're truly sorry. Our daughter caused you so much trouble, and we didn't even know about it. She's always been very sheltered and naive about the world. We've been trying to arrange a marriage for her, but she wanted a more free-spirited love. She met your husband without our knowledge and got carried away without knowing who he really was. She thought she found a divorced man on a dating app and wanted to move in with him. We told her to stop seeing him, but she didn't listen. She was so caught up in her fantasies that she ran away from home to be with him. Our daughter was shocked to find out she was the other woman and blames herself. She's getting therapy now. We're willing to pay you $50,000 as a settlement and hope you'll keep this matter private. The other woman and her parents shook my hand firmly. I understand your apology, but I have one condition. I'm preparing for a divorce, but my husband won't agree. If you're willing to cooperate and provide testimony if this goes to trial, then I'll accept the settlement. Okay, we'll cooperate, but we don't want our daughter to have a permanent record of this. Is there any other way we can help punish him? Well, it just so happens that his workplace is our client. In an unexpected turn of events, the woman my husband cheated with and I teamed up. We planned to give him a taste of his own medicine. His workplace was about to face a crisis because he had upset an executive at one of their client companies. And guess who would take the fall? Only my husband. Meanwhile, back at home, his parents were trying to reach out to him, unaware of the chaos. Jennifer isn't answering our calls, and she won't call back either. Is she so caught up in work that she forgot about us? When is she coming back? We miss seeing our grandchild, his mother said. Mom, you don't get it. I cheated on Jennifer while she was away, and now it looks like we're headed for divorce, my husband confessed. His mother replied, that woman who puts work before her husband is to blame. Maybe it's better if you end things with Jennifer and get back together with the woman you cheated with. My in-laws seem to think that the other woman's family had more money than ours, so they sided with my husband and his lover, attacking me relentlessly. They called me repeatedly, but I blocked their calls. Then they started calling me at work. When I refused to talk to them, they showed up at my workplace, causing a scene. Let go of our son. It's because of you being such a career-focused woman that our son cheated. He'd be happier with his lover, so stop interfering, they demanded. What are you even saying? I want to divorce Donnie. He's the one refusing. Plus, the woman he cheated with doesn't want him back. He tricked the daughter of a big-shot executive into dating him, and they're furious. It's going to be a big mess, I explained. Once they realized their son had angered an important client, my in-laws suddenly changed sides and tried to be nice to me. We had no idea it was this serious. We must have misunderstood. We're sorry. Our son messed up, but he feels bad. You'll forgive him, right, Jennifer? They pleaded. I have to decline. You just insulted me, and now you're asking for forgiveness? Please leave, I told them firmly. When they refused to leave, I had security escort them out. Because of the scene they caused, my company decided to sue them for disrupting business. After all the drama, I finally got the compensation from my husband and got the divorce. The other woman's family also demanded compensation for their daughter's suffering and therapy costs. With the loss of his job and having to pay hefty settlements, my husband was now in deep debt. He couldn't afford to quit, and he was trapped. 2 years had passed since my assignment started. When everything settled down, I finished my assignment successfully and was getting ready to go back to the main office. My hard work paid off, and I got promoted to department manager. If I hadn't taken the assignment, I might still be stuck in a loveless marriage. But I realize now that a man like him would have cheated sooner or later, and I would have clashed with his parents anyway. I've learned that I'm better suited for work than family life, and I'm incredibly fulfilled and happy now.
I'll let my parents live in this house. You can't even cook, so leave lol, Mark said to me with a grin, like he was proud of himself. I was so shocked I couldn't even respond. There is no way I would let my parents live in my house and then try to move in with my in-laws without my permission and try to kick me, the owner of the house, out. I've been bothered by Mark's bossy attitude for a while, but now it's really upsetting. I can't keep living with Mark if he keeps acting like this. I've decided that Mark needs to face consequences. My name is Sarah, and I'm a housewife in my 40s. I live with my husband, Mark. Mark is a house husband. He doesn't work but takes care of the housework because I have a job. I work to earn the money we need. All of this is to have a stable life with Mark, but it feels like my efforts are pointless. Mark has a very controlling personality. It's not that I think there's anything wrong with being a stay-at-home husband or that men should always work. But even though he's not working, he acts like he's the one in charge and is protecting the house. Out of the blue, Mark would say something like, "I'm so tired today, I want some ice cream, go buy it for me," while lounging in the living room at 11 p.m. The convenience store isn't far, but after a hard day at work, I was exhausted and annoyed by his demanding attitude. "Why don't you go get it yourself? It's just a short walk to the store," I replied, sounding harsher than I intended. That's how much Mark's behavior irritated me. When I refused, Mark chuckled and said, "You think that's how you should behave? You never know what will happen if you upset your husband. He always acts like he's the man of the house and deserves respect because of it." Honestly, I'm fed up with Mark acting superior and expecting respect just because he's the husband. Every time he behaves this way, I feel more and more frustrated and unwilling to deal with him. At that moment, I realized that if I kept dealing with Mark on top of my already stressful job, my stress would become unbearable. So I said, "I'm really tired. I'm sorry, I'm going to rest in my room." But Mark didn't like my response and stopped me, saying, "Wait, what's with that attitude towards your husband? I could kick you out right now if I wanted to. Do you think it's alright to upset your spouse like that?" He looked angry. Who does he think he's kidding, acting like the boss when he doesn't even work? He can upset me whenever he wants, but heaven forbid I upset him. It's just like a child's tantrum. "I'm sorry, but I'm really exhausted. Please understand," I said with a forced smile, not wanting to talk anymore. Mark sighed deeply and muttered, "You're such a disappointment as a wife." At this point, I didn't have the energy to argue, so I just said, "I'm sorry," again and went to my room. Day by day, I was worn down by Mark's overbearing behavior, but I didn't have the energy to confront him about it. That's how exhausted I was. Then one day, I caught a bad cold. The doctor said it was a stress-induced fever, and the first thing that came to my mind was Mark. I was so sick that I couldn't move, so I took a day off from work and could only lie down in bed. When I told Mark about my condition, he snapped, "A cold? That's just an excuse. Go to work, you're useless." His words seemed to make my fever spike even higher. He added, "I won't be taking care of you. This is your mess, deal with it." So I was left alone in my room, moaning from the fever. There were no ice packs or anything to help. I was too weak to prepare anything for myself, and I didn't want to face Mark again for fear of more verbal abuse. My temperature reached 103 degrees Fahrenheit. The fever was so high that my body was drenched in sweat. I couldn't even get up to change my clothes, even when they were soaked. I thought, how much easier would it be if I could just pass away with these thoughts? I endured a painful night alone. Maybe it was the fever, but I couldn't sleep at all. Even when the sun set and it was time to see the night sky, feelings of loneliness and doubt overwhelmed me, and it was unbearable. I really wanted Mark to help, not necessarily to bring down my fever, but just to get me an ice pack, bring a cold compress, and say, "Are you okay?" But that was just a fantasy. The words I actually received tore at my heart, leading to new anxieties that tormented me. Why must I be the only one to feel this way? What did I do wrong? Why can't things go well with Mark? Once these thoughts started, I couldn't stop the tears. It was just so painful. After about 3 days of rest, my fever finally subsided and I was able to return to work. My colleagues and bosses were concerned, asking, "Are you sure you're all right?" But my health was improving, and more than anything, I had to support the household. When I mentioned that I couldn't afford to take more time off, they seemed even more worried. Their kindness, which was so much more than the attitude I received from Mark, brought tears to my eyes. I guess my emotional breaking point was close. A voice inside me was screaming that I couldn't deal with Mark any longer. I was ignoring that, pushing myself too hard. This way of life wouldn't last forever. Someday I'd reach my limit and wouldn't be able to get back up. Deep down I knew that, but I didn't have the presence of mind to deal with the situation before reaching my limit. By this time, my affection for Mark had already faded, but I didn't have the energy to start planning to live separately. How could I clear these feelings? With these worries, I worked hard every day, came home exhausted, and dealt with Mark's whims. This was my daily life. One day, while I was relaxing in my room, Mark called out, "I have something important to discuss. Come here." It had been a long time since we had a serious talk. Usually, Mark wouldn't inform me about various things and would make significant decisions on his own. So with a sinking feeling, I wondered what this was about. As I sat down for the discussion, Mark, with an excitement I'd never seen before, said, "I'll let my parents live in this house. You can't even cook, so leave." Oh. The first word that slipped out was, "What?" "You need to leave because you're living with my in-laws," he continued. I couldn't accept the reality of Mark's utterly selfish remarks, but he continued pushing forward with the conversation. He wanted to change the ownership of the house so it belonged to him and his parents. He planned to divorce me and start a new family, stating that his decision was final, and my opinions wouldn't change it. I felt overwhelmed by decisions made without any regard for my feelings. My parents were thrilled when I suggested they move in with us. They've missed me, and I need to take care of them as the head of the household. Mark, full of himself with his man-of-the-house mentality, only thought about his own needs. I knew I couldn't go on with Mark any longer. My heart told me it was impossible. Ignoring my feelings, Mark chuckled, "You love me so much, don't you? I know this is shocking coming from a husband you love so dearly, but I'm sorry. I just want to take care of my family. Please understand," Mark said in a tone that felt like a rebuke. But I wanted to respond, "That's not true at all." I had no affection left for Mark. What remained was disbelief at his selfish actions and regret for not ending things sooner. Why hadn't I left him earlier? If I had, Mark wouldn't have taken advantage of me so much or been so selfish and arrogant. I even despised my past self for being too weak to let him go. Seeing my distress, Mark seemed to misunderstand, thinking I still loved him and didn't want a divorce. But that couldn't be further from the truth. My feelings for Mark had faded long ago. All that was left was disgust for a man who thought I still cared despite everything. To make myself clear, I spoke up, "Fine then, I'll leave." At those words, Mark exclaimed, "What?" Clearly, he hadn't expected me to agree to a divorce and leave so readily. He needed to realize that the old me, who used to bail him out, was gone for good. From now on, whatever happens to Mark, I won't be there to help him because we won't be a couple anymore. Seeing my determination, Mark looked shocked and frozen in place. I seized the moment to head to my room and pack the essentials. I couldn't take larger items today, so I'd have to arrange for movers later. As I prepared to leave, Mark hurried over and asked, "Are you sure about this? If we divorce, we'll be strangers." I smiled and replied, "I've already fallen out of love with you. Letting go feels like a weight lifted off my shoulders." Hearing this, Mark stood there looking lost. I nodded, said, "Thanks for everything," and walked out of the house. Mark had a worried look on his face. After I returned to my parents' place and explained everything, they were furious with Mark's behavior at first, but calmed down once they knew I had a plan. I started recovering at my parents' home while sorting out various matters, starting with the divorce. After sending the divorce papers, I received a message from Mark. "Are you sure about this? I don't know if it's really a good thing, but I don't have any feelings for you anymore. If we've gone this far and he says there's no divorce, that would be a problem. I feel so much better now that you're gone, so fill out the divorce papers quickly." When I replied, there was no response. A few days later, I received completed divorce papers from Mark, with his sections already filled out. I promptly completed my parts and submitted them to the county office on the same day. Now Mark and I are officially divorced. I no longer have to support the household as Mark's wife. During the divorce, we divided our assets. Mark got the house as he had originally insisted on it, so I transferred ownership to him and decided to move on. The house was never really comfortable for me anyway. It had been more of a burden. Instead, I decided to seek alimony from Mark. His parents covered it since he wasn't working, but now he's actively job hunting, likely planning to repay them once he finds a decent job. However, reality doesn't always follow plans. A month passed after the divorce was finalized, and I moved out of my parents' home into a new place, enjoying a peaceful life. Then I received a call from Mark. Honestly, I found it annoying. I immediately guessed why he was calling, but ignoring him might lead to more complications. So, knowing I'd have to talk to him sooner or later, I decided to address it now for the sake of my own future. "Hello, what do you want after all this time?" I was completely fed up with dealing with Mark. I wanted him to get to the point quickly. Reluctantly, I answered the phone, and he pleaded, "Please help me." His desperate tone made me chuckle. I knew Mark was in a tough spot, but I hadn't expected it to be this bad. "Well, what's going on? You need to tell me the whole story," I replied, half amused. I had a feeling about why Mark was in trouble, but I wanted him to explain it himself. When I pressed him, Mark started explaining hesitantly, stumbling over his words. He had taken over the house after our divorce and managed fine for a month. But now he had a rent payment due. Being unemployed, he couldn't cover it himself, so he asked my former parents-in-law, who were on a pension, to help out. However, the bill was much higher than they expected, around $1,800. There was no way they could afford that on their fixed income. My former in-laws were furious, insisting, "This isn't what we agreed to." They laid the blame squarely on Mark. Lost and uncertain, Mark called me in tears, asking for help. I didn't realize the rent would be so high. "The place is a mess now. What are you going to do about it?" Frustrated, Mark was now blaming me. It was true I hadn't mentioned the rent specifics earlier, but it was Mark's own folly to take over the house without knowing its monthly costs. He had treated me like an outsider and pushed me away, and now he was facing the consequences of his actions. Despite this, he couldn't accept responsibility and instead reached out to me for help. I couldn't help but sigh at his audacity. Ignoring my feelings, Mark continued urgently, "Please, I need your help. We can't keep going like this. I need you." His desperation was clear in his voice. They must be feeling incredibly trapped right now. The rent due date had likely passed, meaning they might already be behind. The landlord of that house was known for their short temper and strict policy on rent payments. I remembered being warned repeatedly when I rented the house, never be late with the rent. If they missed a payment, they were in for serious trouble with the owner. Mark had met the landlord a couple of times and knew how intimidating they could be. He must have been desperate when he called me for help. "Please just cover the rent for 1 month. I don't have anyone else to turn to. You still care about me, right? If someone you care about is in trouble, you should help them out," Mark pleaded, his tone still self-centered. "My feelings for you have long since faded." I wanted to say those words, but I held back and replied coldly, "I'm sorry, but I don't have any obligation to help you. You were the one who cut me off. Now you expect me to assist you when it's convenient for you? That's not fair." Mark defended himself. "Please don't be so cold. I really can't handle this alone. Whether you still love me or not doesn't matter now. We were married once, right? Can't you help me out just this once?" "No, you were the one who left me. Even before that, my feelings for you had already cooled. It's been a long time since I stopped loving you." When I heard Mark's dejected voice on the other end of the phone saying, "I can't believe it," it struck a chord deep within me. For so long, I endured everything. Even when Mark was selfish, took me for granted or mistreated me when I was sick, I stayed by his side, hoping to salvage our marriage. I worked tirelessly for the life we had, but this was the outcome. Why hadn't I left sooner when my love for him faded? Why didn't I distance myself earlier? These regrets flooded in, mingling with the anger I felt towards him. Mark never truly faced me. He never showed real concern, never protected me, and never embraced the idea of navigating life together as a team. All this time, he treated me like a maid, a mere money-making machine. Each time he acted this way, he seemed oblivious to my suffering. Yet now, despite all this being a result of his actions, he came pleading for help as if he were the victim. His self-centered attitude was repelling. "Please help me. I'm begging you. What about getting married again? Let's start over properly this time. I promise I'll never push you away again," Mark proposed, desperately. I couldn't help but chuckle bitterly at Mark's desperate suggestion. "Remarry you? Are you kidding me? All of this is the result of your own actions. I've been trying to work things out in my own way for a long, long time. I kept hoping you would face reality. And now you want me to start over with you, pretending none of that ever happened? Do you expect me to go back to those miserable days? That's never going to happen. I refuse to return to that life, no matter what." I became so emotional that tears started flowing. I couldn't tell if they were from anger or sadness. Mark remained silent in response to my words. Unable to continue the conversation any longer, I simply said, "Goodbye," and hung up. Mark didn't call back, and wanting to avoid hearing his voice ever again, I blocked his number. Later, I heard from mutual friends that Mark and his family were evicted from their home. Mark attempted to persuade my former in-laws to cover his rent, but they were furious, refusing his request and upsetting the landlord in the process. Left with no choice, they had to leave. Mark hasn't had much success finding a full-time job and is now working part-time to get by. Because they had to sell their house, my former in-laws are now squeezed into a rundown apartment, all three of them together. Meanwhile, I've been deeply focused on my work, and my boss has even discussed a promotion with me. There's a possibility I might become the first female manager in our company, and I've been receiving admiration from both colleagues and juniors. Sometimes friends inquire, "Aren't you thinking about getting married?" Honestly, after my past experiences, I have a rather negative view of marriage. The idea of dating or marrying again doesn't appeal to me right now, but life is long and there's no rush. Many people in this generation live their entire lives happily unmarried. What matters most to me is living a life without regrets and staying true to myself. With that in mind, I want to continue navigating life at my own pace.
I walked into the house after a long day at work, eager to relax, but something didn't feel right. The usual peace I hoped for was missing. As I passed by our small office, there he was, Greg, my husband, sitting at the desk, papers spread out in front of him. And not just any papers, my personal files, bank statements, and journals. The realization hit me like a punch. My heart pounded as I tried to make sense of what he was doing. What? What are you doing, Greg?" I asked, my voice quivering with a mix of anger and disbelief. He looked up slowly, not the least bit apologetic. "Just checking on things, Emma," he replied calmly, his tone patronizing. "With the baby coming, I need to know everything's in order." His nonchalance stirred a deep anger within me, one I had tried to bury for too long. "You have no right to go through my things," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to hold onto whatever shred of respect I had left for him. Greg barely flinched. Instead, he leaned back, crossing his arms as if I were the one overreacting. "Emma, your finances are our finances. If there's a problem, it's my business too. You're about to be a mother, and you're acting like I don't have a right to know. Don't we all need to be responsible here?" His words were smooth, like he'd rehearsed them, but the look in his eyes was hard. He was crossing a line he didn't even seem to see. But it wasn't just about today. This was about the months I'd spent watching Greg and his mother, Susan, slowly take control of my life, invading my personal space, my decisions, and even my thoughts. That evening, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, Greg snoring peacefully beside me, while my mind raced, replaying our conversation and every red flag I'd ignored. Since the moment Susan had moved in temporarily to help with the pregnancy, my life had felt like a tightrope walk. And yet, in every decision, Greg sided with her. If I wanted space, she needed to help. If I expressed a preference, I was being difficult. My wants and needs became secondary, and then, it seemed, they became invisible. The next day, I confided in my best friend, Rachel. We met at our usual coffee shop, a place where I felt like I could breathe. Rachel listened carefully, her eyes widening as I poured out everything I'd been holding back. The constant belittling, the passive-aggressive comments from Susan, the feeling of being trapped in my own home. "Emma," she said finally, her voice soft but firm, "you don't have to keep living like this. You're not alone. You deserve so much better than this. You deserve to be happy." Her words struck me, and a knot I hadn't realized was there loosened just a little. Rachel was right. I didn't have to keep suffering quietly, putting up with Greg's coldness and Susan's manipulations. That day, for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a life without them. A life where I had control over my choices, where I could raise my child in peace. I realized I needed help. I needed to find a lawyer and get my life back. A few days later, I walked into the office of a family attorney named Ben. The room was warm, filled with light from large windows, and the air felt calm and inviting. Ben looked to be in his mid-40s, with a kind smile and a reassuring presence. I felt a glimmer of hope as I sat across from him and explained my situation. "I feel like I'm constantly being watched," I said, my voice breaking as I described Susan's overbearing presence, Greg's constant siding with her, and how they both managed to isolate me from friends and family. "It's like you're trying to erase me." Ben listened intently, nodding with understanding. When I finished, he leaned forward. "Emma, you're very brave for coming here today," he said. "You're taking a necessary step for your well-being and your child's. But be prepared. Standing up to them won't be easy. They'll likely fight this." "I'm ready," I replied, and in that moment, I meant it. I can't keep living like this. In the following weeks, Rachel helped me gather documents and create a plan. Each piece of evidence, every journal entry, every carefully saved message felt like a piece of armor. There were nights when I felt like I couldn't go on, when the weight of my decision threatened to pull me under. But each time, I thought of my future, and I thought of my baby. One night, I sat down with my parents and told them everything. They had sensed something was wrong, but they hadn't known the extent. Their support was unwavering, and the pride in my father's eyes as he told me, "You're stronger than you know, Emma," gave me the resolve I needed. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. I barely slept, my stomach a bundle of nerves as I walked into the courthouse with Rachel and Ben beside me. The waiting area was filled with people, all facing their own battles. I tried to steady my breathing, reminding myself that this was my fight for freedom, for my life back. Greg and Susan were already seated when I entered the courtroom. Greg's face was hard, expressionless, while Susan's gaze was cold and sharp, her eyes calculating. She looked at me as though I were a stranger, but that's exactly what I'd become to her. I wasn't the submissive woman she'd wanted me to be. Ben leaned over and whispered, "Remember, Emma, you're here to tell your story, to claim back what's yours." I took a deep breath, feeling my strength return. I was ready. When it was my turn to speak, I walked to the stand, my legs trembling but my mind sharp. I took a deep breath and started from the beginning. I married Greg because I loved him, and I thought we could build a life together. But things changed, I said, my voice steady. His mother moved in without asking me. Suddenly, every decision I made seemed to be a problem. I was treated like an outsider in my own home. The words came easier now, and I continued, describing the feeling of being pushed aside, of constantly being watched, of having every choice questioned and overruled. I shared how Susan would criticize every decision I made, how Greg would defend her no matter what, and how I'd been locked out of my own life. The judge listened intently, her gaze focused and empathetic. "This isn't just about a house or a marriage," I said, fighting back tears. "It's about the right to live freely and to raise my child in a home where I'm respected, where I'm safe." Greg's lawyer presented his side, painting me as overly sensitive, accusing me of trying to separate Greg from his family. They claimed Susan was only trying to help. But when I looked at the judge, I saw that she was listening, really listening to my words. She could see through their words, and that knowledge gave me strength. That night, just as I was beginning to feel some hope, Ben called. "Emma, we need to meet," he said, his voice serious. "Greg and Susan are planning to claim you're emotionally unstable. They're trying to prove you're unfit to be a mother." I felt anger rise within me, hot and unyielding. "They're lying. I've done everything to hold this family together, and they're the ones tearing it apart." Ben nodded. "We'll gather more evidence. Their claims are desperate, and the judge will see that. But be prepared. They won't back down easily." Over the next few days, Rachel and I worked late into the night, gathering more proof. I combed through my journals, recounting every hurtful moment, every degrading comment. The memories were painful, but each one steeled my resolve. I would not let them win. Finally, the day of the final hearing arrived. The courtroom felt colder, the tension palpable. Greg and Susan sat across from me, their faces hardened. I could feel their resentment, their anger. But I was beyond caring. This was my fight, and I was ready to see it through. As I spoke, I laid bare every moment of manipulation, every instance of feeling like a prisoner in my own home. I described the pain of being isolated, the nights I'd spent crying in silence, feeling like I was disappearing. I could see the judge's expression soften, her brow furrowing as she absorbed my words. Finally, Greg's lawyer tried once more, repeating their claims of my supposed instability. But I saw the judge's expression shift. She wasn't buying it. When the judge delivered her verdict, her voice was calm but firm. "Based on the evidence and testimonies, I find that Emma has endured emotional abuse and manipulation. I am granting her full custody of her child and sole ownership of the home." The relief washed over me, so powerful I thought I might collapse. I'd won. I was free. In the weeks that followed, I moved back into my house, my true home, and started redecorating, reclaiming my space. Every brushstroke of paint, every new piece of furniture felt like a step forward, a small victory in rebuilding my life. And as I stood in what was now my baby's nursery, looking out the window with my hand on my growing belly, I whispered a promise to my child. You'll grow up in a home filled with love and respect. A home where you can be anything you want to be. I knew my journey wasn't over, but I finally taken control. I was no longer lost. I was finally, truly free. Dee is retiring, so to celebrate, I'm taking our parents to Germany today. I'm using your platinum card for the trip and plan to have a great time with it. This is going to be an amazing trip. What are you talking about? Exactly what I said. No, I don't understand what you mean by exactly what I said. Please explain. We need to hurry. Okay, we'll go soon. Sorry, I have to leave now. I'll hear the details when I get back. Just one thing. Does the credit card work? Huh? My unemployed husband Jeremy took my credit card to take our parents on a trip. I've tolerated a lot from Jeremy, but this seems like the perfect chance to teach him a lesson. When he comes back from the trip, he'll have some big regrets. I'm Maria, a 35-year-old company employee. After graduating from a top university, I got a job at a major company and have been doing well there. Even though I'm only 35, I earn enough to support Jeremy, who doesn't work, and a child if we had one. But we don't have kids yet, though we're thinking about it soon. With a good job and income, I should be happy in my married life, but I'm not. The idea of having a child is just a possibility, but Jeremy not working is real. I'm not hungry for dinner because I ate snacks. That's fine, but what about your job search? I didn't go for an interview today. I just stayed home looking at job websites. Jeremy quit his job a year ago and has been job hunting since. Actually, he's been working part-time but doesn't stay in any job for long. He starts a job, quits soon after, takes a break, and then looks for another part-time job. You're looking at part-time jobs again, aren't you? I'm looking at both full-time and part-time. Why don't you stop looking for part-time jobs and focus on finding a full-time position? I know, but everything has its own timing. I wish Jeremy would find a steady job, but he can't be pushed too hard. He quit his last job because he had a conflict with his boss over work policies. That boss was known for being difficult. Jeremy stood up to him as the office representative with support from his colleagues. But when the situation got worse, his colleagues sided with the boss, not Jeremy. Because of that, Jeremy lost the boss's approval, felt betrayed by his colleagues, and found it hard to stay, so he left the company. Jeremy, dinner's ready. Can you bring it here? After quitting his job, Jeremy became reclusive and stayed in his room. After about 3 weeks, he started coming out and helping with household chores. All the dishes, really? Thanks. Then it's all yours. Yeah, I've got nothing but time, Jeremy said with a smile, but it didn't seem very genuine. After another 3 weeks, he started looking for jobs again. I have an interview today. Is it your top choice? Yeah, I'm going to get this job and start over. I'm rooting for you. Do your best. A month after quitting, Jeremy started job hunting seriously, but after another month, he still hadn't found a job. Why am I always getting rejected? Damn it, it's all my old company's fault. Don't get frustrated. You'll find something good. Of course I'm frustrated. I didn't do anything wrong. Jeremy might not be entirely blameless, but what happened at his last job wasn't completely his fault either. Still, quitting because of interpersonal issues doesn't look good to potential employers. It feels like I can't do anything right anymore. That's not true. You have an interview tomorrow. Let's work on your resume. It's pointless. I'm not going tomorrow. The constant rejections wore Jeremy down. But after a while, he became defiant. One day, I came home to find torn-up resumes on the living room floor. Knowing the interview didn't go well, I chose my words carefully. Can you throw that trash in the bin? I'm done. Done with what? Job hunting. We can live on your income, right? I don't need to work. True, we could live on my income alone. Some people don't work and do a great job as full-time homemakers, but that's not Jeremy's situation. He's just avoiding dealing with the tough realities. I understand his reluctance after the bad experience at his last job and the unsuccessful job hunt, but we need to face this issue directly. I decided to be patient with Jeremy for now. Jeremy, you still haven't found a job. What's your plan? I've worked hard before. This is just an extended break. I'm not just resting. I'm studying for the future. That's good to hear. Since Jeremy quit his job, his parents, Linda and Brandon, started visiting us more often. They were probably worried about him. Hearing that Jeremy was preparing for his next job seemed to ease their concerns, but it was a lie. The beer will run out today. Can you pick some up on your way home? It's running out again. You drink too much. Try to cut down a bit. Fine, I won't ask you again. I'll buy it myself. Jeremy wasn't studying or job hunting. Instead, he spent his days watching TV and drinking beer. He probably didn't want others to know he was unemployed. I didn't want to hurt Jeremy by telling my in-laws the truth, so I decided to keep quiet about his excuses. But after over 5 months without job hunting, I decided it was time to address it. Jeremy, maybe it's time to start job hunting. You seem more settled now. What? It's been less than half a year since the problems at my last job. You want me to work again so soon after that? I just think the break has been a bit long. Stop nagging. You don't understand my situation because your job is going well. I have my own struggles, you know. Everyone has work problems and relationship issues. We all try to solve them. Let's work through this together. I get it. I'll look for a job. Jeremy walked out in the middle of our conversation. It seemed my words had hurt him, but him agreeing to look for a job felt like a positive step. I decided to wait until he was in a better mood to apologize. I got a job because of your nagging. That's great. Where? At a nearby supermarket. So, you'll need to learn and work hard, right? It's just part-time. No need to work too hard. Part-time or not, a job is a job. Is that a problem? I wanted to say something to Jeremy, but maybe starting a little work could help him get back on track. I decided to observe and see how it goes. I'm home. Jeremy, you're back. How's the job? I quit the supermarket part-time job. Why? It hasn't been that long. A college student there was being bossy, telling me to always put the vegetable boxes at the bottom in storage. It felt like harassment. That student was probably just showing you how to do the job. In many workplaces, even a college student can be a senior. Jeremy kept finding new jobs but couldn't stick with any of them. It's been a year, and he still hasn't managed to keep a job for long. Jeremy, what job are you doing now? I'm working part-time at a pub now. I've never worked in food and beverage before, but it's interesting. I think I've finally found my calling. Really? That's great, but isn't the pay from a part-time restaurant job kind of low? That's fine. I'm currently apprenticing and aiming to go independent. So you plan to own your own place someday? Exactly. The income is small now, but I'm working hard for that goal. Then take this. Treat yourself to something nice for once. Jeremy continued to put on a good front in front of his parents, but it was all lies. He quit the pub job just 4 days after this conversation and even took an allowance from his parents. I couldn't help but feel disappointed in my husband, so I decided it was time to be firmer. Hey Jeremy, we need to talk later. I'm at a good part in the movie. You can pause it. I took the remote control from the table, paused the movie, and started the conversation. It's just pressing pause at a crucial moment. What's up? Jeremy, you're 38, right? That's a prime working age. Don't you think about the future? Spending all day at home drinking and watching TV isn't a plan. The future? There are plenty of 38-year-olds who aren't working. Many people enjoy life without a job. True, but those people usually have something else they're passionate about. Do you have anything like that? Yeah. I know you're upset about me not working. I'll look for another part-time job. Jeremy seemed set on sticking with part-time work. Given his reasons for leaving previous jobs and his struggles with job hunting, I had tried to be gentle, but it was time for him to get serious. I needed to be stricter. One day at work, I got a text from Jeremy. Dad's retiring, so we're going to Germany to celebrate starting today. I'm borrowing your platinum card to splurge on the trip. I panicked and called him right away. What do you mean, a trip? Exactly what I said. I don't understand. Please explain. There are so many problems here. It's okay to celebrate Brandon's retirement, but he should have asked me before using my money and borrowing the credit card. It feels like stealing. And why am I paying for a trip to Germany that I'm not even going on? Jeremy was probably bragging to his parents, claiming the money was from his savings. The thought of it infuriated me, but one thing Jeremy said caught my attention. You mentioned borrowing a credit card. The one for our house? Yeah. Why do I have a platinum card? Some people think you need a high income for it, but that's not true. Your credit history, stable income, and other factors matter, and it's achievable even in your 40s. The annual fee is high, but I use it for the benefits and points. However, that credit card is in my wallet. So you took the credit card from home? Yeah, so I'm counting on you for the payment. Jeremy was excited about his trip to Germany and spoke to me in a provocative tone. I had been patient with him for a long time, but this seemed like a good opportunity to address the situation. Jeremy thought he was being clever by taking my credit card and acting all cheerful, but he was in for a surprise. What are you doing? We need to go. Got it, I'm coming. Sorry, I need to move on now. I'll hear the details when I get back. Just one more thing, the credit card you took won't work. What? That can't be right. It's in Maria's name, and the expiry date is this month. It's short, but it shouldn't be a problem. You're lying, right? Maria, you're lying to stop me from using the card, aren't you? Yes, it expires this month. That's why I've already received a new credit card. What does that mean? So, I have 2 credit cards right now. When a new one is activated, the old one sometimes stops working. I've already started using the new card, so the one you took won't work. You're kidding, right? You think I'm lying? If you don't believe me, I can send you the link to the credit card website, or you could just try using the card yourself. It would be interesting to see you try to pay with a card that doesn't work. This credit card really won't work. Hey, hurry up. I hear his parents calling him in the background, but Jeremy, realizing the card won't work, seems too flustered to pay them any attention. What should I do? I told them I'd pay for everything except the round-trip travel. Oh, so they covered the flight? Yes. Dad felt bad about having all the trip costs covered. What should I do? I'm about to take a cab, and I don't even have money for that. That's not my problem. You said you'd pay for everything except the flight. Using my credit card in the first place was wrong. Pay with your own money. How can I? I don't have any money. Exactly. Jeremy, you haven't been working seriously. It's your fault for trying to look good by taking your parents on a trip without having the money. I'm at work, so I have to hang up now. I just wanted to tell you about the credit card. Wait, I hung up and went back to work. Jeremy, unable to pay for even the cab, would have to come clean to his parents. That night, after finishing work, I got a call from Laura. I heard from Jeremy that he tried to use your credit card and lied about working. I'm sorry for the trouble. No need to apologize, Laura. I'm sorry about the credit card issues. Are you okay with the money? We'll cover the trip's costs when we get back. I'll make sure Jeremy apologizes and finds a job right away. I'm sorry, Laura, but I'm considering divorcing Jeremy. Divorce because of this? It's part of it, but Jeremy has been taking money from me for a while. What? I stopped giving Jeremy money to curb his drinking. He started a part-time job and bought his own alcohol, but the salary wasn't enough for daily drinking. Jeremy began stealing money from my wallet to buy alcohol. Over the year, he repeatedly took amounts ranging from $7 to $70, which added up to a significant sum. I had been strict, hoping he'd change, but when he stole my credit card for his trip, it was clear he had no intention of improving. I respect your decision. Should I tell Jeremy about the divorce? Could you just tell him I want a divorce? We'll discuss the details when he gets home. About an hour later, the next morning after my call with Laura, Jeremy called. He must have heard about the divorce from her, but I had asked her to wait until he was back to discuss it. Too exhausted to deal with it, I decided not to answer. The next morning, after returning from work, I found Jeremy at home. He had cut his trip short. I'll work properly now. Please don't leave me, he pleaded as I entered the living room. Seeing Jeremy, he immediately apologized. His regrets seemed sincere, but came too late. He had a whole year to change and still asked for another chance. I had warned him repeatedly, but he squandered every opportunity. I'm not going to give Jeremy another chance because he gave up on me. My mind is made up. Can you leave? Please don't say that. If you don't leave, should I call someone to help you pack your things? I'll move out only if you can afford the rent here. Jeremy fell silent. He didn't even have the money for next month's rent, let alone any income. My words and the reality of the impending divorce made him realize the severity of his situation. With nothing to take, Jeremy seemed to be leaving the house, probably heading to his parents' place. I considered asking if he had money for transportation, but Jeremy isn't a child. He should manage his own affairs, money or not. I watched him leave, feeling a mix of sadness and resolve. After leaving, Jeremy went to his parents' house. Later, I received a call from Linda. My parents-in-law let Jeremy stay for one night, but then asked him to leave the next day. They were worried he might become too reliant on them if he stayed. They wanted to create a situation where he had to fend for himself. It must have been tough for them to send their son away, but they felt it was necessary for his recovery. Kicked out from his parents' home, Jeremy came back to our house, pleading with me. "Please help me. I've got nowhere to go and no money." That's the result of your own actions. You need to handle it yourself. Everyone faces hardships. Sometimes it's necessary to ask for help, but all you've done in the past year is abandon your responsibilities and do as you please. I didn't let Jeremy into the house and turned him away from the doorstep. The divorce went through eventually. Despite his reluctance, with the support of his parents, it happened faster than expected. I don't know what happened to Jeremy after we split. He's probably still jumping from job to job and making excuses for himself. I used to think I'd feel lonely without Jeremy, but I was surprised to find that I didn't feel lonely at all. Instead, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. Living with Jeremy had been incredibly stressful. His attitude and constant need for reassurance kept me on edge. I was always walking on eggshells, afraid of saying something that might upset him. Now, without him around, I don't have to worry about that anymore. My life has become much more comfortable. I hadn't realized how much of a burden our relationship had been. I was constantly trying to support him both emotionally and financially, and it drained me. Now I can focus on myself and my own well-being. I'm relieved that I didn't let Jeremy drag me down with him. I was always trying to help him, hoping he would change, but it never happened. Letting go of that responsibility has been freeing. I no longer have to cater to anyone else's needs or deal with anyone else's problems. I can finally live my life on my own terms without having to accommodate anyone else. It's a fresh start, and I'm embracing it fully. I have more time for myself, more energy to pursue my own interests, and a clearer mind to think about my future. I'm grateful for this new chapter in my life, free from the stress and worry that Jeremy brought into it.
My name is Ashley, I'm 32 years old, and I married the love of my life, Bobby, 5 years ago. Bobby is the most wonderful person I've ever met, kind, fun-loving, and someone who makes me feel special every single day. However, the same cannot be said about his mother, Catherine, who, from the very beginning, seemed to have a problem with me. I understand Bobby is her cherished son, and she wants to protect him, but her protective nature often crosses the line. Catherine has a talent for pushing buttons under the guise of innocence, provoking reactions, and then playing the victim, a behavior that many might recognize in someone they know. Unfortunately for me, that someone is my mother-in-law. I was raised to value directness and open communication, traits that stood in stark contrast to Catherine's approach. These qualities of mine were what attracted Bobby to me. He's gentler and more reserved, a perfect complement to my outspoken nature. They say opposites attract, and in our case, it's true. My background in life coaching has given me insight into human behavior, and it's clear to me that Catherine, despite her claims, does not always act with good intentions. Our personalities clashed from the start, and our first meeting set the tone for our relationship. It happened during a dinner with Bobby, his father Jeffrey, and Catherine. Out of nowhere, she commented on my eating habits, suggesting I should eat less. Her remark was so unexpected that everyone fell silent. I was mortified, my face burning with embarrassment, while Jeffrey looked down uncomfortably, and Bobby, visibly upset, confronted his mother. Catherine tried to backtrack, claiming she was only offering advice and referencing old photos Bobby had shown her, where, according to her, I looked better. Despite my instincts to address the comment directly, I held back, not wanting to make a scene at my first meeting with Bobby's family. Instead, I forced a polite smile and thanked her, burying my frustration. I wanted so badly to make a good impression, but the encounter left me shaken. As time passed, Catherine's behavior only worsened, her antagonism grew, and our interactions became more strained. I hoped that showing her how much I cared for Bobby would help ease the tension, but it seemed to have the opposite effect. On the bright side, My relationship with Bobby's father, Jeffrey, blossomed. He was kind and welcoming, and it was clear Bobby had inherited his gentle nature. Bobby's extended family and friends, including his lifelong buddy Wayne, also embraced me warmly. I felt supported by everyone, except Catherine. Her efforts to undermine me peaked during our wedding planning. She insisted on controlling every detail, from my hairstyle to my dress, even suggesting I mimic her own bridal look from years ago. When I politely declined, she outright insulted me in front of my bridal party, calling me ugly, though she quickly tried to backtrack. The damage was done. Jeffrey, thankfully, stepped in to put an end to her outbursts, but the sting of her words lingered. Her attempts to overshadow the day didn't succeed, thanks to the love and support of Bobby's family and friends. Still, the emotional toll of her actions weighed heavily on me. Over time, her negativity began to drain my vibrant energy, and I realized something had to change. Fast forward to today, 5 years into our marriage, and we found ourselves back at Bobby's childhood home for a Sunday dinner. Catherine had invited us, along with Bobby's childhood friend Wayne, hinting at an important announcement. Though I was skeptical of her motives, what unfolded that evening was truly unexpected. The evening took an unexpected turn when Catherine, with a theatrical flourish, announced her big news. She had planned a family trip to Florida for her upcoming birthday and waved a confirmation letter triumphantly. Excitement rippled through the room, with Bobby's face lighting up at the mention of Florida, a place he'd always dreamed of visiting. "That's incredible," he exclaimed, his enthusiasm mirrored by the others around the table. Gratitude filled the air as everyone celebrated Catherine's generous gesture. But just as the mood reached its peak, Catherine turned to me with a blunt, chilling statement. "Oh, actually, you're not coming." The words hung in the air, the room falling silent as confusion spread across every face. Bobby, visibly taken aback, demanded clarification, his voice a mix of disbelief and anger. "What do you mean she's not coming? That can't be right." It quickly came to light that Catherine had deliberately cancelled my ticket, claiming it was due to last-minute arrangements and a desire to avoid extra charges. My heart sank as the realization hit. My presence had been planned for, and then just as easily erased, without a single word to me. Tension bubbled over as the others voiced their outrage. Wayne and I sat quietly, observing the growing chaos as Catherine's reasoning was pressed for. Finally, under the weight of everyone's demands, she revealed her true motive. She wanted to spend her later years surrounded by those she felt closest to. "You just don't make that list," she stated coldly, her words cutting through me like a blade. The room erupted. Bobby, furious, demanded an explanation for her blatant exclusion, while Catherine weakly tried to justify herself. "Wayne is like family," she argued, pointing to him as an example of someone she deemed precious and cherished. Her logic was as insulting as it was flawed. Bobby wasted no time in calling her out. "Wayne isn't even blood-related, yet he's on the list? And Ashley, my wife, isn't?" His voice trembled with anger and disbelief. "How can you say she's not part of this family? She's my wife, Mom. That makes her family, whether you like it or not." Catherine's dismissive smile faltered as Bobby's words struck a nerve. Her attempt to justify her favoritism only deepened the divide. I couldn't stay silent any longer. "No," I said firmly, my voice cutting through the noise. All eyes turned to me, Catherine's included. Her smugness disappeared, replaced by a flicker of unease. "This isn't about family or last-minute arrangements," I continued. "This is about respect, or your complete lack of it. I may not have been part of your life for as long as Wayne, but I am your son's wife. That should mean something, and I refuse to let you diminish that any longer." The room was still, the tension palpable as my words sank in. Bobby reached for my hand, his grip reassuring as he stood by my side. Catherine, for the first time, seemed genuinely at a loss for how to respond. In that moment, the dynamics of the room shifted, and the cracks in Catherine's facade began to show. I laid bare the truth of the past 5 years, the blatant dislike Catherine harbored for me, her unbearable behavior, and her narcissistic tendencies. It was evident to everyone, not just me. When Catherine attempted to silence me with a thinly veiled threat to watch my words, it only fueled my resolve. I declared my intention to leave a place that had become a battleground rather than a home. But before stepping away, I turned to Bobby, my husband, and reaffirmed how much he meant to me despite everything. I urged him to join the family trip to Florida, acknowledging the complicated bond he shared with his mother, driven by love despite her flaws. Facing Catherine directly, I laid out an undeniable truth. Her efforts to push me away would never succeed. My love for her son tethered me to this family, regardless of whether she accepted it. When I accused her of an unhealthy obsession with undermining me, her expression faltered. It was a nerve struck too precisely to ignore. I called out her relentless attempts to diminish me, despite my consistent kindness and patience. My parting words were a declaration of resilience and independence. While Catherine might have decided I wasn't part of the family and didn't belong in Florida, I affirmed my unwavering place in Bobby's life and, by extension, in the family. I promised to remain steadfast for Bobby, Jeffrey, and even Wayne, drawing a clear and unyielding line with Catherine. This confrontation was more than a moment of defiance. It was a turning point. For the first time, Catherine's sharp tongue failed her. Her usual quick retorts were nowhere to be found, leaving her in stunned silence. I knew I had finally made an impact. As I prepared to leave, I shared a tender moment with Bobby. He offered to drive me home. Concern etched across his face, but I reassured him of my well-being and encouraged him to stay for the family discussion about the trip. Retrieving my purse from the kitchen, I found Catherine there, seemingly having retreated to collect her thoughts. Her request for me to leave swiftly was expected, echoing her earlier hostility with an added layer of animosity. I ignored her, unfazed, and reached for my purse, only to notice a letter beside it, unmistakably in Catherine's handwriting. At first, I hesitated. What could this letter contain? Her bitterness, perhaps? Or was it something entirely unexpected? I assumed the letter was related to the Florida trip. Driven by a mix of curiosity and lingering spite, I decided to glance at it. Addressed to Wayne, the letter began with affectionate words, painting a picture of a close bond between Catherine and him. As I read further, the tone shifted dramatically. Catherine expressed a diminished love for her son Bobby, contrasting it with her enduring affection for Wayne. This revelation was shocking, suggesting a clear favoritism toward Wayne over Bobby. The implications were deeply unsettling, exposing a family dynamic far more fractured than I had imagined. I was torn between the impropriety of reading someone else's correspondence and the weight of what I had uncovered. The letter demanded attention, it couldn't be ignored. Realizing the significance of the discovery, I carefully considered my next steps. Everyone who needed to be involved, Bobby, Wayne, and Jeffrey, was still in the house. The question now was how to address this without deepening the existing tensions. The weight of the decision bore down on me. After scrutinizing the letter once more to ensure I hadn't misunderstood its contents, I returned to the dining room with it in hand. The words were as shocking as they had been upon my first reading. As I entered, the room quieted, and all eyes turned to me. Jeffrey, ever the peacemaker, quickly attempted to smooth things over. He apologized for Catherine's earlier behavior and reassured me that I would join them on the Florida trip. He dismissed Catherine's actions as a temporary mood, confident he could persuade her to reconsider, but his reassurances were unnecessary. I had uncovered something far more pressing. The concern in Bobby's eyes was unmistakable. He likely feared the recent confrontation and ongoing strain with his mother had pushed me to my breaking point. In our private moments, Bobby had often expressed amazement at my patience, marveling at how deeply I loved him despite everything. I met his worried gaze and silently resolved to protect him from what I had read. When I inquired about Catherine's whereabouts, Jeffrey explained she had retreated to nurse a headache, likely a result of our earlier confrontation. While her tendency to prioritize herself was a familiar annoyance, this time, her absence felt like an obstacle. What I had to share required her presence. Yet the urgency of the situation and the encouragement of those present pushed me to proceed without her. The growing anxiety etched into Bobby's expression made it clear that delaying any longer would only exacerbate his stress. "Fine," I said, conceding to the urgency of the moment. "Let's do this." Drawing a deep breath, I began. When I was in the kitchen, retrieving my purse, I found this. Holding up the letter, I paused, letting its presence sink in. What I read, my voice faltered briefly, but I pressed on. "Changes everything." The weight of Catherine's words hung heavy in the air as I explained the contents of the letter, careful to reveal the details with sensitivity. The room was silent except for the sound of Bobby exhaling sharply, his expression shifting from concern to pain. The revelation struck deeply, unraveling years of buried dynamics and forcing an undeniable truth into the open. In that moment, I understood this wasn't just about Catherine's actions or the letter itself. It was about the future of our family, what we could rebuild, and what might be forever lost. Gathering my resolve, I prepared for the storm that was sure to follow. I shared the shocking contents of the letter with Bobby, Wayne, and Jeffrey. As I read aloud, the words hung heavily in the room, exposing Catherine's deep-seated resentment toward me and the drastic actions she planned to take against her son. The letter detailed her preference for Wayne over Bobby, her decision to disinherit Bobby in Wayne's favor, and her baseless blame of me for the supposed rift in her relationship with her son. The revelation was jarring. Catherine's bitterness and readiness to sever ties with Bobby painted a chilling picture. When I finished reading, the room was thick with tension, each person grappling with the betrayal in their own way. Jeffrey, ever the mediator, was on the verge of tears. Wayne appeared stunned, struggling to process the extent of Catherine's plans. Bobby, however, was a storm of fury and disbelief, his emotions oscillating between hurt and indignation. The realization hit Bobby hardest. He wrestled with how his mother could justify cutting him off while blaming me for her actions. It was a harsh wake-up call for all of us, laying bare the depth of Catherine's manipulation. The ensuing discussion was emotional and heated, with Bobby venting his frustration over her toxic behavior. It became clear that something had to change. 3 weeks passed after this revelation, leading up to the much-anticipated Florida trip. Unbeknownst to Catherine, a plan had been set in motion, a direct response to her divisive actions. On the morning of the trip, Catherine found a letter from Jeffrey by her bedside. The note, written in a tone of normalcy, instructed her to meet the family at the airport and suggested that all was proceeding as planned. Eager to begin the trip, Catherine hurried to the airport, unaware of the seismic shift in family dynamics caused by her letter. At the airport, her frantic search for her family was a physical manifestation of the confusion and isolation her actions had sown. Assuming they were already aboard the plane, she boarded, clinging to the hope of reuniting with them in Florida. After a long journey, Catherine eagerly called Jeffrey, ready to celebrate together. Instead, Jeffrey revealed the truth: they hadn't gone to Florida at all. The family was still at home, gathered together, a unified front against the discord she had tried to create. Her confusion turned to shock as Jeffrey explained the change of plans. He confronted her about the letter, exposing her attempts to cut Bobby out of her will and the unjustified animosity toward me. Catherine's denials and excuses were dismissed by the family, who collectively made it clear that her actions had irreparably damaged their trust. The confrontation reached its peak when the family unanimously decided to leave Catherine to her own devices. Even on her birthday, her divisive behavior had led to her isolation. They hoped her time alone in Florida would prompt reflection on the gravity of her actions. The family's solidarity in the face of Catherine's betrayal underscored the strength of their bond. Bobby, Jeffrey, Wayne, and I stood firm, valuing respect and forgiveness while holding her accountable for the pain she had caused. Catherine's realization of her solitude marked a rare moment of vulnerability. In a desperate attempt to reconcile, she reached out to Jeffrey, seeking his company. However, he remained resolute, emphasizing that any return to the family required a serious discussion about boundaries and a genuine change in her behavior. Bobby, too, made his position clear. Any future relationship with his mother depended on her willingness to truly change. He set firm boundaries, warning that further disrespect would result in permanent estrangement. Wayne, recognizing his role in enabling her behavior through kindness, withdrew, further isolating her. Despite Catherine's pleas for me to mediate, I maintained that mending her relationships was her responsibility alone. As time has passed, she has worked to repair the damage, though regaining trust and respect has proven to be an uphill battle. The hope remains that Catherine will learn from this experience, understanding the value of family and the far-reaching consequences of her actions.
Nadia, you're being lazy again. Oops. It's Kelly. I try to get up, but my body won't move. The door slides open, and Kelly comes in, sounding angry. Why are you taking a break? Just because you're a daughter-in-law? Kelly comes over to me and does something shocking. She takes away the cushion I'm sitting on. What? I fall back on the floor as she takes the cushion. I quickly cover my stomach with my hands but feel a sharp pain. It seems Kelly kicked me in the belly when I fell. Get up already. With that annoying belly, I should give you another one. I felt hopeless, but someone was watching. They made Kelly sit down and scolded her. Because of that person, I was saved. My name is Nadia. I'm 30 years old and I'm pregnant. Even though I have some health problems because of the pregnancy, The happiness of carrying the baby of the person I love keeps me strong. Nadia, are you okay? If you feel bad, tell me. Yeah, thanks. We're heading to my parents' house to share the news about the baby. Tom's driving, keeping an eye on me. I told Tom first about the pregnancy. When I shared it after his work, he was exhausted but thrilled. Whether it's a boy or a girl, all that matters is a healthy baby, he said, getting emotional, which made me tear up. I wondered if the people we're going to tell will be as happy. Are you feeling nervous? A little, I admit. Tom smiles at me, and I manage a faint smile back. If we were telling my biological parents, maybe I wouldn't be so anxious. It's a bit complicated. I lost my mom when I was young. Since then, my dad has been raising my brother and me alone. It must have been really tough. I love my dad a lot. When my brother moved out after getting married, and it was my turn, I worried about leaving my father alone. Dad, want to live together. After discussing it with Tom, I proposed this to my father, but his reply surprised me. You know, I've been thinking of remarrying. It turned out he had been close to a woman for a while, so I gained a new mother. When we arrived at my parents' house, my new mother welcomed us. Hello, welcome. Mom, it's been a while. Even though I call her Mom, it feels strange every time. She became my mother after I moved out, so I've hardly spent time with her. Unlike my easygoing father, she always seems strict. Simply put, she's not easy to get along with. Today I have something I want you all to hear. Beside my father sat my new mother, and beside me Tom. After we all gathered in the living room, I nervously shared my news. Oh, what is it? Well, it's still early, but I'm pregnant. Really? Congratulations, that's wonderful. My dad's face lit up with joy, his usual laugh lines showing. I'm going to be a grandpa. Looks like it's time for me to start feeling old. I can't wait to be a dad. I'm so thrilled. While Tom and my dad chatted happily, I quietly watched my mom's reaction. She didn't show much expression, hard to figure out. What was she thinking? Just as I wondered, she got up and left the room. Should I go after her? I hesitated, but she quickly returned. She had a thin blanket and a cushion in her hands. Nadia, use these. This room can get chilly. Oh, thank you. I felt a bit happy realizing she was worried about me, but my mom always seemed stern. Was it her cold, serious manner that made her hard to approach? A simple congratulations would have meant a lot to me. Maybe then we could have become closer. I was lost in these hopeful thoughts. We planned to leave right after sharing the news, but my brother and his wife, Kelly, dropped by, changing our plans. Tom and I live about an hour's drive from my parents' house, while my brother and Kelly are just a 5-minute drive away. They often visit on days off like today. It was an unexpected meeting, but a good chance to share my pregnancy news. No way. Ah, you beat me to it. That's too bad, my brother joked, pretending to be disappointed. Kelly lightly tapped his head. What are you saying? First, congrats. Congratulations, Nadia. Thank you. Kelly had a vibe similar to my mom's, direct and kind, but a bit intimidating. Honestly, I'm envious. We've been trying with no luck. Just getting older over here. At this rate, we'll be old before we know it. I'm only 2 years younger than you. Thanks for trying to cheer me up. Kelly often made self-deprecating comments like this. I always find it tough to respond in these moments. Well, we should probably head out, Tom. Yeah, let's go. As we were getting ready to leave, my parents and my brother's family offered to walk us out. Feeling a bit dizzy, maybe from the pregnancy or just the tension, I needed to be careful not to fall. I was holding onto the handrail for safety when suddenly I felt a heavy impact on my right shoulder from behind. Ouch! I nearly stumbled but managed to stay upright thanks to the handrail. Sorry, Nadia. I tripped and accidentally bumped into you. Are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. It was Kelly who had bumped into me. Tripped? But we were just walking down a straight hallway. Can that really happen? Normally, wouldn't you grab the handrail or the person next to you if you were about to fall? Why would she bump into me knowing I was pregnant? A chill ran down my spine, feeling uneasy. Sorry. Oh, you don't think I did it on purpose, do you? Don't look at me like that. It's okay. I'm fine. I couldn't accuse her without proof. Maybe it was just an accident. With that, we left my parents' house without saying anything else. After getting home, I took some time to think. Maybe I'm being a bit oversensitive because of the pregnancy. I've always gotten along okay with Kelly. There are things about her that I find difficult, but we've never really had a problem. I'm sure that feeling of malice I sensed was just in my head. I tried to convince myself of that. But after that, I started encountering strange things more often, and with each incident my distrust towards Kelly grew. The first odd thing was about my personal belongings left at my parents' house. It turns out they were somehow thrown out in the garbage. It was my mom who contacted me. I found some clothes that looked familiar in the trash. I picked them up, but what do you want to do with them? Can you leave them as they are? I'd like to check them later. When Tom and I went to check, they were indeed my belongings. Both my mom and dad said they would go into my room, but they wouldn't throw anything away without asking. So who did? Well, the day before the garbage day, Kelly came over to visit. Oddly enough, she was alone. My heart raced as previous incidents came flooding back. My mom looked at me silently, then said something as if she had sensed something. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. It's not good to suspect without proof. But maybe you should ask, what will you do? What can I do? It bothered me, but I didn't want to stir up unnecessary trouble. It's okay, she probably just came over to visit. All right then. For a while, everything was calm. Thankfully, my pregnancy was progressing smoothly, and the baby was growing healthy. Before I knew it, I was already 8 months along. By this point, I had reached a stable phase of the pregnancy, and my physical condition had improved. Since I hadn't seen Kelly in a while, there were no more issues. Then one day, my dad invited us over, saying, "Why don't you and Tom come over on your next day off?" He chose a day when there was a big festival near our parents' house. Every year, we gather at our parents' house for this festival. It's a lively celebration with all our relatives. When I told them about your pregnancy, everyone was thrilled. They said they'd love to see you, but of course, your health comes first. Standing for long periods was challenging with my growing belly, but otherwise I was doing well. I think we'll go. Yay, everyone will be really happy. With Tom saying yes, we went to visit my parents' house after a long time. Hi there, Nadia. Congratulations. My, you've grown a lot. Your baby is going to be strong and healthy. Every family member I saw said congrats. Some of them I only see on special days like this. I felt really happy and ended up moving around more than I should have. Nadia, are you moving too much? Is your belly feeling tight? My mom noticed it first. I hadn't even realized my belly was tight. Oh, you're right, it does feel a bit tight. Please take care. You're going to be this child's mom, Mom said firmly, then held my hand and guided me to another room. There was a mattress in there. Take a rest for a little while. Thank you. I could still hear everyone's voices from the nearby room. Lying down, I realized I was more tired than I thought. I felt like I could fall asleep right there. As my head started feeling fuzzy and I began to drift off, I felt a gentle tap on my head. Huh. When I opened my eyes, there was Kelly with a serious expression. Hey, what are you doing here? Everyone came to see Nadia, didn't they? It's kind of selfish to sleep. Come on, get up. Without waiting for me to respond, Kelly pulled me back out to where the relatives were. Oh, Nadia, where were you? Surrounded by everyone, I couldn't say I needed rest. So I just joined the conversation, forcing a smile. But as I stood and moved around, I could feel my belly tightening again. It wasn't good. I tried to leave a few times, but Kelly stopped me each time. Seriously, you always try to be alone. Do you dislike everyone that much? Accused like this, I couldn't leave. I stayed as long as I could, but when Kelly went to the bathroom, I finally sneaked away to another room. I really wanted to lie down, but I couldn't take the risk. I didn't know when Kelly might come back. Struggling to keep steady, I managed to sit down on a cushion I brought from the other room. I let out a quiet sigh. Honestly, lying down was all I wanted. But I couldn't risk Kelly finding me. She'd been subtly criticizing me since earlier. This place felt like a battleground. I couldn't relax for a moment, stay strong. But despite my efforts, my belly kept tightening. It wasn't painful, but it felt hard. I was only 8 months pregnant, not ready to give birth yet. I didn't want to stress the baby more. But if I rested, who knows what Kelly might say about me? When should I move? What should I do? While I sat there, holding my belly, worrying. Nadia, slacking off again. Darn it. It's Kelly. I tried to stand up, but I couldn't move. With the sound of the sliding door opening, Kelly entered, her voice full of anger. Why are you resting? Just because you're the daughter-in-law? Kelly marched aggressively towards me. But here, in this house, I'm treated like a daughter, not just a daughter-in-law. That's what I believed. But then she did something unbelievable. She grabbed the cushion I was sitting on. Huh? The force made me fall back onto the mat. Instinctively, I protected my stomach with my hands, but then felt a heavy impact on them. It was Kelly's foot. She had kicked towards my stomach as I fell. Luckily, her foot hit my hands first, lessening the impact on my belly. Get up already with that annoying belly. Need me to give you another one? She didn't seem to care anymore. I knew I needed to get up quickly, but my heavy belly and the shock slowed me down. You're too slow. As I was on all fours, Kelly raised her foot again. Stop. I couldn't react in time. I curled up tightly, bracing myself. And then it happened. Stop. A loud, commanding voice filled the room. I looked towards the voice and saw my mother standing there, her expression fierce. Don't move, understand? My mother quickly walked over and crouched next to me. Mom, how's your belly? Did you hit your head? Are you okay? Any pain? Mom checked me over, her brows furrowed with concern. I'm okay, just scraped my leg a bit. Nothing serious. Let me see. But it's just a small. Just let me see. I extended my right leg as she asked. It wasn't a big deal. When I fell, I couldn't protect myself properly because I was shielding my belly, so I just scraped my knee. It was a bit raw, but not serious. I was relieved that the baby was okay, but seeing my red knee, Mom's frown deepened. It looks sore. We need to clean it. It's really not a big deal. Don't downplay it. Your body matters. Mom turned around and shot a sharp glare at Kelly. Kelly, sit down over there. It's not what you think. I was just trying to, you know. Just sit down. Kelly, ordered firmly by my mom, sat down looking pale. Mom took a deep breath and shouted even louder. This is ridiculous. The room felt tense. Startled, Kelly shrieked and flinched. Kelly, do you understand what you've done? It's not like that. I was just trying to fix the cushion, and Nadia fell over. Right, Nadia? I was fixing it? Kelly tried to justify herself. That's not true, Kelly, I replied after a moment. You clearly pulled it out. And why would anyone need to fix a cushion someone's sitting on? It doesn't make sense, and it's not necessary. Yeah, exactly. I didn't expect Nadia to fall like that. It really surprised me. Kelly nodded vigorously. There was no sign of remorse or concern in her expression. It was like she was insisting she did nothing wrong. It felt like she blamed me for being clumsy. I could almost hear her thoughts. She was trying to get away with it, but I knew she did it on purpose. At that moment, I was terrified, not just for myself, but for the baby inside me. I shuddered at the thought of what could have happened if I hadn't shielded my belly. If she had kicked me directly, it would have been horrifying. I wanted to confront Kelly, but the words wouldn't come out. Seeing my struggle, Kelly smirked. Look, it seems Nadia doesn't have anything else to say, so let's drop this topic. We're running out of drinks anyway, and I should go check on everyone. Kelly stood up quickly, her smug demeanor from earlier now serving as an excuse to leave. Mom watched silently. She's going to get away with it. I have to speak up. After everything that happened, after risking my baby's safety, I couldn't just stay quiet. In my panic and confusion, I managed to blurt out, You kicked me. Kelly turned back, looking startled. What are you talking about, Nadia? You kicked me, Kelly. Whether pulling the cushion was on purpose or not, I don't know, but you aimed for my belly. Wait, Nadia. Kelly started to come towards me, flustered. Stay calm. There must be a misunderstanding. I am calm. It's not a misunderstanding. You definitely kicked me. If Mom hadn't intervened, you would have done it again. I would never do that. Shut up. Just be quiet. Kelly reached out to cover my mouth. I almost stumbled, but Mom quickly supported me. Calm down. Mom looked sharply at Kelly. Kelly, seeming weakened by Mom's gaze, froze and stepped back. When Mom calmly said, Sit down, Kelly reluctantly returned to her chair. I've been listening quietly to both sides, but I never expected it to come to this. Please believe me, Nadia must be getting overly sensitive because of her pregnancy. She's imagining things. Kelly burst into tears. Not only was she good at manipulating words, but she also knew how to play the emotional card. Meanwhile, I had no proof and struggled to defend myself. When I got emotional, it became even harder to speak up. Would I just lose to Kelly's accusations and end up crying myself to sleep again? Is this going to be my life from now on? Tears welled up and I looked down. Then I felt a strong movement in my belly. It felt like the baby inside was urging me on. Right, I'm going to be a mother. I can't let someone like her have her way. Wiping away my tears, I straightened up and faced forward. I may be extra cautious for the sake of my precious child, but this is not imagination. Kelly, you did kick my belly. Kelly looked at me, eyes wide. Ignoring her reaction, I continued. And it's not just that. You've been unkind to me multiple times. You threw away my clothes, bumped into me, and today you didn't let me rest. It was terrible. And then your actions earlier. If you call all that imagination, then you're just shameless. After I finished speaking, I took a deep breath, and Kelly glared at me, her face turning red. Do you even know what you're saying? Do you think yelling will shut me up? Maybe in the past, but not anymore. I gently stroked my belly and locked eyes with Kelly. For the sake of this child, I won't let myself be beaten by someone who's just good at talking and being loud. I won't be defeated by a bully. What did you just say? Kelly's anger flared, her nostrils twitching as if she was ready to explode. But I wasn't afraid. I couldn't stay silent any longer. Come at me if you dare. I braced myself for a confrontation, ready for whatever might come next. But then something unexpected happened. My mom burst into laughter. Both Kelly and I froze in surprise. Mom finally composed herself after a deep breath. A cornered mouse will bite the cat, as they say, she murmured, then cleared her throat and looked between Kelly and me. Kelly, do you have anything else to add? You can't possibly believe what she's saying. It's all nonsense. Is that so? But you know, Kelly, I only believe what I see with my own eyes. Then Mom repeated the words Kelly had used when she snatched away the cushion. You were just resting, being a daughter-in-law, right? Why would Mom know those words? I saw everything from the beginning. I was so shocked I could hardly breathe. I couldn't believe what I was seeing and couldn't move immediately. I'm sorry for frightening you, Nadia. Mom murmured an apology, and I quickly waved my hands, saying it wasn't her fault. Mom had seen everything, not just a part of it, but everything. So Kelly had been lying in front of Mom. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Kelly's face went pale. I had been worried about Kelly's behavior towards you, Nadia, but without evidence and being an old woman, I thought it was inappropriate to interfere. I never expected it to come to this. Even Kelly was speechless. I thought I might need to intervene, but Nadia, you handled it so well. That's what a mother looks like. You did amazing, just like my own daughter. Mom smiled warmly and nodded approvingly. Seeing her gentle expression, I finally relaxed and found myself crying in her comforting embrace. Then Tom, my brother, and Dad were summoned from the other room for an urgent family meeting. After discussing everything, we decided to cut ties with Kelly. Mom would coordinate our visits to ensure we wouldn't run into her. My brother, upon learning the truth, turned pale and kept apologizing to Tom and me. It turned out Kelly's behavior stemmed from jealousy. She was upset that I was pregnant while she couldn't conceive. I couldn't forgive her, but I did feel some sympathy. Later on, I gave birth safely. Tom cried tears of joy and stayed by my side at the hospital every day. He quickly adapted to taking care of everything except breastfeeding. Though the journey was tough until the birth, I knew the real challenge was just beginning. Mom and I grew much closer after that incident. I felt the love and support of everyone around me. With their help, I'm determined to raise our baby well.
During dinner at a restaurant, my mother-in-law made a deeply hurtful remark, suggesting that I didn't belong simply because I wasn't related by blood. Her words stung, making me feel undervalued, and I had the sudden urge to leave. As I rose to go, she demanded that I pay for the meal since I was leaving early. Feeling mistreated, I refused to pay for everyone else's dinner. My name is Samantha, and I work in an office. My husband, Peter, and I have a generally happy marriage. But there's one significant issue: his mother. She constantly criticizes me and interferes in our lives. Although I've shared my concerns with Peter, he doesn't see it as a problem, believing her actions are just signs of affection. Over time, her intrusions worsened. She had a key to our home, given to her by Peter, and would let herself in uninvited, critiquing everything from my housekeeping to spreading unfounded rumors about me to our neighbors. I begged Peter to consider moving, but he was too preoccupied with work to address the situation. Then came a turning point. Peter received a significant promotion and a raise after completing a major project. I saw this as a chance for a fresh start and suggested we think about starting a family now that we were financially stable. I hoped this would make him realize the negative impact his mother was having on our lives and see the need for change. However, Peter had a different perspective. He believed that if we were going to start a family, we should live in a more child-friendly town with good daycare options and parks, unlike our current neighborhood. After some discussion, Peter finally agreed to move, and I was thrilled. But my joy was short-lived. The very next day, my mother-in-law showed up unannounced, as usual. I braced myself for her typical criticisms, but she was surprisingly pleasant. She came to celebrate Peter's recent success and invited us to dinner at a fancy restaurant known for its exceptional food and service. "It's posh, and everyone raves about it," she said, inviting me to join her. "That sounds nice," I replied, keeping my tone polite despite my lingering frustration with her. "Clear your schedule. I really want you to come," she insisted, ignoring my attempts to decline. "Don't say no. We want you there," she added firmly, leaving me no choice. After she left, smirking, I felt something was off. She had excluded me from events before, but now she was adamant about including me. Later, I discussed it with Peter, who revealed that his mother had already arranged for us all to attend together, specifically choosing this restaurant to celebrate as a family. This sudden shift in her behavior left me conflicted. Peter was excited about the dinner. "Don't you feel the same, Samantha?" he asked. But I couldn't share his enthusiasm. "Sorry, but I'm not excited. I'm worried about how much it's going to cost at such an expensive restaurant," I admitted, my unease growing with each passing moment. "I don't want to go. Just tell them I have something urgent and enjoy yourself," I told Peter, feeling a growing sense of unease about the dinner. "Why are you being so negative?" he asked, clearly frustrated. "It's not just us. My brothers and their wives are coming too. It would look bad if you weren't there with the whole family." I could see how excited he was about dining at such a fancy venue for the first time, but I felt trapped. My reluctance was brushed aside, and it seemed like my husband was more aligned with his mother's perspective than mine. Feeling unsupported and desperate, I took a drastic step. I ordered a voice recorder online, suspecting that the harassment from my mother-in-law wouldn't end at this celebration. I planned to discreetly record her behavior, hoping it would finally make Peter understand what I had been enduring. If he continued to dismiss my concerns, I even considered divorce. Oddly, preparing for that possibility brought me a slight sense of relief. As the day of the dinner approached, I felt somber and filled with apprehension. I hardly knew Peter's brothers, having only met them briefly at our wedding, and my interactions with their wives were limited to basic pleasantries. When we arrived at the restaurant, we were escorted to a private room. Inside, my mother-in-law, Peter's brothers, and their wives were already seated. Peter glanced around, perplexed. "Did the waiter get the seating wrong?" he asked, noticing there was no seat for me. "I'll go ask. Everyone please start without me." He stepped out of the room to speak with the staff. As soon as he was gone, my mother-in-law stood up, her expression cold and stern. "There's no seat for you," she said, her tone biting. "Why would I invite a stranger who just married my son to a family celebration?" Her words stung, but before I could respond, she continued. "You have a choice. Prove you really want to be part of this family, or leave and never come back. Decide now." I didn't hesitate. "I'm leaving," I said firmly, rising from the table without a second glance. "I'm leaving," I stated firmly, without a moment's hesitation. My mother-in-law looked startled, as if she had expected me to beg for her acceptance instead. "Listen to me carefully," she continued, undeterred by my response. "If you pay the entire bill for everyone here, I'll acknowledge you as Peter's wife. I understand you must feel frustrated being treated like an outsider. So pay up and become part of the family." "I already told you, I'm leaving. Why should I cover the expenses for someone else's family gathering?" I retorted, turning to go. She slammed her hand on the table and raised her voice. "Can't you see I'm offering you a chance to be part of the family? Are you really okay with remaining a stranger? Pay up." "No," I replied calmly. I'm perfectly fine being seen as a stranger. And since I'm not family, I won't be paying for your meal. Goodbye, mother-in-law." With finality, I turned and walked out of the room. She tried to follow, but by the time she reached the doorway, I was already gone, leaving the confrontation and the oppressive dinner behind me. By the time I reached the exit of the restaurant, I was determined to go straight home and send Peter an email explaining the entire ordeal. To my surprise, he arrived home just 15 minutes after I did. He explained that the waiter had confirmed there was no mistake with the reservation. My mother-in-law had deliberately caused the scene. It turned out that my decision to stand up for myself had a ripple effect. The wives of Peter's brothers had witnessed the incident, and their perspective on the family dynamics shifted dramatically. The wives who had silently endured similar mistreatment from my mother-in-law found strength in my actions. Emboldened by my stand, they too decided to leave the restaurant, making a decisive statement of solidarity. Their husbands, the eldest and third sons, quickly followed them out. I braced myself for the inevitable backlash, and sure enough, within 4 hours, my phone began ringing nonstop. It became so incessant that I eventually blocked her number, but one call slipped through from an unknown number. "Hello, sorry for calling so late. Is this Samantha's mobile phone?" The man on the line introduced himself as a police officer from a nearby station. He explained that after everyone had left the restaurant, my mother-in-law had stayed behind, trying to continue eating. Shockingly, she attempted to charge the bill to me. However, the restaurant staff, already displeased with her earlier behavior, denied her request. They believed I had no intention of returning to settle the bill, especially after leaving upset. Finding herself in a bind, my mother-in-law was advised to pay by card. But she had neither a card nor enough cash to cover the expenses for everyone's meals. Desperate, she tried to reach out to other family members for help, but none responded to her calls. Frustrated and enraged, her anger escalated, and she began breaking expensive vases and flower pots inside the restaurant. The disruption prompted the staff to call the police. When the officers arrived, they managed to calm her somewhat, but she remained defiant, refusing to take responsibility for the chaos she had caused. With the restaurant yet to be compensated, the staff requested the police to escort her home. Feeling the sense of duty, despite having ignored the earlier calls, my husband and I reluctantly returned to the restaurant to address the situation. Upon arrival, we found the police still attempting to pacify my mother-in-law. The moment she saw me, she glared and shouted, "You're useless. This mess happened because you didn't pay the bill. Isn't it only natural to help your mother? Pay up now." Her nearly threatening tone, especially in front of law enforcement, took me aback. The officers had made it clear that if no one took responsibility, they would have to either escort her to a family member's home or arrest her for attempting to leave without paying the bill. Exasperated and determined to end the drama, I responded firmly, "Please take her away. Arrest her or do whatever you need to do, but make her take responsibility." My mother-in-law looked stunned by my assertiveness. "How could you say something so heartless? I can't believe it. Just pay the bill. It's bad luck to have a family member arrested," she pleaded. But my resolve was unshaken. "I don't care. I'm not family, and I don't want to be associated with someone who's acting irrationally and causing a disturbance," I replied. With that, I turned to leave the restaurant, determined to let the police handle the situation. All I wanted was to distance myself from the chaos and ensure my mother-in-law faced the consequences of her actions. Just as I was about to walk out, my husband, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke up. "I understand what happened was awful for Samantha, but is it really serious enough to warrant an arrest?" he asked, coming to his mother's defense. "You're missing the point," I shot back. "She's in trouble with the police because she tried to leave without paying and caused a scene. It has nothing to do with me. Or are you suggesting I should be responsible for paying for 7 people's meals when I didn't even eat?" My husband fell silent, then walked past me towards the police and the restaurant staff. Anticipating his next move, I called out, "If you're going to pay for her meal and compensate them, we're getting divorced. Think about that." He didn't respond to my ultimatum. Instead, he quietly took out his wallet. Feeling hurt and betrayed, I left the restaurant, walking back home alone. Once home, I began packing my essential belongings, my decision to leave solidifying with every item I placed in my bag. Just before midnight, my husband returned. "Mom's not getting arrested," he sighed, clearly exhausted. "She was in the wrong, but the restaurant said they forgive her if I compensated them and promised she wouldn't come back. I didn't have enough money, so I called my brothers to help. I'm so tired, he went on, recounting the night's events, his frustration growing as he noticed my silence. Finally, he saw the packed bags. What's with these bags? He asked, confusion evident on his face. I'm getting ready to leave, I replied, my voice steady. We're getting divorced. His face fell as the weight of my words hit him, and I knew the rift his actions had caused was too deep to repair. I told you that if you sided with her, we get divorced. You can't say you didn't hear me, I declared, my voice steady and resolute. My husband's face showed pure shock, his eyes wide with astonishment before his expression shifted, and he began raising his voice. What's happening? You've been acting so strange today. I understand that Mom did something terrible, but why does this have to lead to divorce? He exclaimed. I've told you countless times that I'm being mistreated, I countered, frustration seeping into my tone. Even with all the evidence and others backing me up, you still chose your almost arrested mother over me. Isn't it reasonable that I want to divorce someone who behaves like that? I've had enough. He continued to protest, but I barely listened. My mind was already focused on leaving the house and taking the necessary steps for a divorce. The very next morning, I went straight to get the divorce papers. When I handed them over to my husband, he made a dramatic show, lamenting how he didn't want a divorce. However, the moment I mentioned involving a lawyer, his reluctance disappeared, and he signed the papers. I sent them off immediately, marking the official end of our marriage. Finally, I felt a profound sense of freedom, reclaiming my independence. Soon after, my now ex-husband moved out and went to live with his parents. It turned out he had relied heavily on me for household chores, and without me, he struggled to manage on his own. The apartment quickly fell into disarray, and disliking the mess, he ended the lease and returned to his parents' home. A similar fate befell his eldest and third brothers. On the day my husband called them to help with the financial compensation at the restaurant, both encountered conflicts with their wives. Their wives had refused to pay for a debacle caused entirely by their mother-in-law. These tensions exposed deeper issues in their marriages, revealing a pattern of behavior far beyond my situation. However, both brothers chose to dip into their savings to help their mother without consulting their wives. This financial decision sparked heated disputes and strained their marriages, leading to serious talks of divorce. Ultimately, both brothers moved back to their parents' home, joining my ex-husband and mother-in-law. Like their mother, they refused to engage in any housework, preferring to rely on others. The entire family dynamic became the talk of the neighborhood, fueling endless gossip. Neighbors whispered about how the wives had allegedly abandoned their husbands, but in truth, they were simply standing up for themselves against a toxic family environment. In the end, my mother-in-law and her 3 sons, reluctant to grow up and take responsibility, found themselves all living together again, trapped by the very behaviors that had driven their families apart. The 3 brothers, in response, received staunch support from their mother, who blamed all the family strife on their wives. My ex-husband, hearing about this, nodded smugly, convinced that divorcing me had been the right decision. Despite the swirling rumors, my relationship with the neighbors remained strong. They knew all too well about my mother-in-law's difficult personality and kept a respectful distance from her, occasionally sharing quiet laughs about her antics. Over time, my mother-in-law developed a notorious reputation in the neighborhood as a parent who had failed to properly raise her sons. My ex-husbands were labeled as mama's boys, criticized for siding with their mother instead of supporting their wives. Despite their attempts to reach out to me, I took decisive steps to start anew. I changed all my contact details and moved to a new house, ensuring they couldn't find me, securing my peace and beginning a fresh chapter far from the turmoil of the past. Since cutting ties with my mother-in-law and her side of the family, my life has transformed remarkably for the better. The relief of no longer having to deal with the constant stress and drama she caused is immense. Even more, the opportunity to form new friendships has greatly enriched my life. During the turbulent time of my divorce, I found unexpected camaraderie with the ex-wives of my former husband's brothers. Our shared experiences with my mother-in-law brought us together, and we've since grown close. Now, we frequently meet up for meals and enjoy weekend shopping trips. Ironically, I find myself grateful to my ex-husband for one thing, introducing me to these incredible women who have become dear friends. In just 3 days, we're planning to explore a new cafe in town. It's refreshing to engage in activities that bring us joy, free from the toxic relationships of the past. This newfound freedom is incredibly liberating. I'm now living the life I've always wanted, surrounded by friends who uplift and support me. Reflecting on how different my life would have been without these friendships, I realize how much they've filled a void I hadn't even recognized. For that, I am profoundly grateful. I cherish these bonds deeply and hope they last a lifetime, as they have truly changed my perspective on what it means to have supportive, meaningful relationships.
Checking my phone, I noticed there were 13 missed calls, all from my mother-in-law. Not again. Just as this thought crossed my mind, my phone vibrated again. "Hello," I answered, and my mother-in-law shouted loudly, "Brittany, where is this month's $33,000 support money?" "What I'm talking about? The $3,000 for this month hasn't been transferred yet." Her voice dripped with anger, never considering our situation. My patience reached its limit. She never reflected on her words or actions, even in this state. It was time for the last resort. I told my mother-in-law on the other end of the phone, "Your son has passed away, so I can no longer provide support. I am Brittany Wagner, a 32-year-old part-time housewife working at a major financial company. I married about 2 years ago, meeting my husband Justin through a shared hobby. His kindness and wonderful smile captivated me, and after a year of dating, we got engaged. We believed we couldn't find better partners than each other. Everything went smoothly until we faced a problem: my mother-in-law. My father-in-law had passed away years ago, and with no siblings, the only family left was my mother-in-law. Trouble started when we visited her to announce our engagement. As I greeted her, Sandra, my mother-in-law, showed her displeasure. "Are you Justin's fiancé?" "Yes, I am. My name is Brittany Wagner." "Nice to meet you." You seem rather plain. I wonder what Justin sees in you." It's curious." I couldn't tell if she was serious or joking. Shocked, I heard such words from the mother of the man I loved. Seeing my distress, Justin looked displeased with his mother. "Wait, Mom, why would you say something like that all of a sudden? Why can you so casually say such awful things about the person I brought? It's different. I just want to choose the right woman for you. I brought her here because I've decided to marry her. It's not up to you to comment on my choice, Destin. You don't have to be so cold. I'm just thinking about what's best for you." The argument between mother and son unfolded, creating a tense atmosphere. As it was my first meeting with my mother-in-law, I couldn't intervene. The uncomfortable air lingered even after the argument, but ultimately, we conveyed our intention to marry. As we left, Sandra spoke to Justin in a somewhat disgruntled tone. "Hey, Justin, you'll keep that promise even after we get married, right?" "Huh? What promise?" "You know about the promise of financial support." "Ah, that. I will continue to do it as always. Please don't bring this up in front of Brittany." The atmosphere between my husband and his mother had been tense for a while, making the air feel heavy. On the way back in the car, I asked Justin about something that had been on my mind. "Hey, Justin, about what you and your mother were discussing when we were leaving." "Ah, yeah. I suppose I should discuss something with you. I heard about financial support, and since my dad passed away, I've been sending money to my mom every month." "How much are you sending?" $2,000 each month." "What? $2,000? I raised my voice unconsciously, shocked by the amount. Justin sighed deeply and began to speak slowly. "Actually, my mom is in debt." "Debt?" "Yeah, she got into debt from gambling in the past. She's been paying it off and living on that, but her legs aren't in good shape anymore. So she spends more time at home now, and she still needs money to live, right?" "Well, yes, but I still think $2,000 is too much." "I know, but if I even slightly reduce the amount, she keeps calling me persistently." "Well, A parent is still a parent, you know? I worry about her since we can't live together. I see. Justin is incredibly caring towards his mother, but it can't be helped. Since his father passed away, his mother is the only family he has left. No matter what her character is like, she's still an important mother to Justin. At that time, all I could think was what a kind person my husband was. Then, one day, 2 months after we got married, during my lunch break, I received a call on my smartphone. It was from my mother-in-law. "Hello?" "Yes," I answered, and she began speaking in a cheerful tone. "It's been a while, Brittany. I have something to discuss. Are you free now?" "Yes, I'm free. What's going on?" "Well, I was thinking maybe you could also start sending me some financial support." I was speechless at her unexpected request, but my mother-in-law continued happily. "You mentioned you work at a financial company, right? So you must have a good salary." "No, that's not the case. Are you trying to lie to me because you don't want to give me money?" "That's not what I'm saying." "Then why not?" "But mother, Justin is still sending you money every month, isn't he?" "Yes, he is." She didn't seem to appreciate the support she was already receiving. I spoke up firmly. "Please listen calmly, mother-in-law. Continuing to send as much as $2,000 a month is a really big deal, you know? And yet, you still want more. I can't understand that." "Oh, is that so? You say that. But if you could just contribute the remaining $1,000, Justin wouldn't be burdened." "What do you mean by that?" "I have Justin as a co-signer on my debt, which means if I default on my payments, the creditors will come after him. Do you understand what I'm saying?" "What? But wasn't the $2,000 Justin sends used for paying off the debt?" "Well, the thing is, it's not enough. I haven't told Justin yet, but the debt is quite substantial." It seemed from the way my mother-in-law spoke that this was a truth unknown to my husband. If we were to have children in the future, it would inevitably mean more expenses. On top of that, paying off my mother-in-law's debt wouldn't be easy. However, if her repayments fell behind by the time the debt transferred to Justin, the interest would likely have ballooned significantly. It was easy to foresee that refusing to help now would ultimately burden my husband. Realizing that, the best course might be to ensure she pays off her debt completely. I hesitantly conveyed to my mother-in-law, "I understood. I'll contribute to the support as well." "Really, Brittany? You're amazing. I knew you would say that. Combined with Justin's, it'll be $3,000 a month. This will be used to properly pay off the debt, right?" "Of course. I plan to pay off the entire amount in about a year. Please promise to pay it off without any delay." "Okay, I understand. It's a promise. So I'll be expecting the support starting from this month," my mother-in-law said, unilaterally ending the call. The stress piled onto my exhausted body, and I felt increasingly depressed. $1,000 every month, that's a significant burden, but it's necessary to prevent future troubles for us as a couple. And if my mother-in-law can't live properly, Justin wouldn't like that either. That evening, I promptly reported this to my husband. He said, "You shouldn't have to go through all this trouble." But I had already agreed with my mother-in-law. I explained it was a tough decision made to avoid future burdens on us. With a look of regret, my husband said, "I'm really sorry, but thank you," showing understanding for my decision. Time passed, and 2 years have gone by since this decision. The support, which was supposed to end in a year, is still ongoing, and we continue to transfer $3,000 to my mother-in-law every month. To complicate matters, my husband fell ill about 2 months ago and has been unable to work. He's on sick leave and receiving a small amount of sickness allowance, but it's minuscule compared to his usual salary. Last month, I used my savings to send the $3,000 to my mother-in-law. But if this continues, even our living expenses will become difficult. Incredibly, my mother-in-law hasn't once visited Justin in the hospital. I informed her a long time ago about his hospitalization, but instead of visiting, she only contacts me to ensure the continuation of the support. Frustrated by her behavior, I finally brought up the subject with my husband. Justin, your mother only talks about money. Even knowing you're hospitalized, we need to seriously consider whether to continue the support. Yeah, I've been thinking the same. I don't want to burden Brittany any further. She's been calling and messaging this month asking, is the support coming? Seriously, even though her own son is in the hospital, all she thinks about is money. Justin, looking somewhat gaunt, expressed his anger towards his mother. Then, with a sudden idea, he said, I've got it, and smiled. What is it, Justin? Well, I just thought of something. It's a last resort, though. Something good. About my mother? Huh, what? My husband proposed an unexpected plan. It might seem excessive, but it seemed the only way to get through to my mother-in-law in her current state. A few weeks later, Justin was discharged from the hospital, fortunately in good health. Since there was no response from my mother-in-law despite numerous attempts to contact her, we hadn't informed her of my husband's discharge date. For the past 2 weeks or so, she had been incessantly demanding financial support. There's no need to purposely send money to a mother who doesn't even worry about her son. My husband remarked while having coffee. As we relaxed, a message came to my smartphone. On closer inspection, there were 13 missed calls from my mother-in-law. Not again. As my phone vibrated again, it was another call from my mother-in-law. I deliberately turned on the speaker so that my husband could hear, and my mother-in-law immediately started shouting. Brittany, where's this month's $3,000 support? What I'm talking about, the $3,000 for this month hasn't been transferred yet. Mother, please calm down. Do you realize right now Justin is? I don't care if he's sick or whatever. You work at a good company. You must have plenty of savings. Hurry up and transfer it to me. My mother-in-law furiously shouted, eventually saying something unbelievable. Do you get it? You married Justin and became his wife, so when Justin can't pay because he's sick, you should pay me. If you don't, I'll make you the co-signer of the debt. At that moment, something inside me snapped. She always exposed her greed, never considering our situation. My patience with her had reached its limit. Doesn't she reflect on her words or actions even in this situation? If that's the case, I have no choice but to play my last card. I firmly told my mother-in-law over the phone, your son has passed away, so I can no longer provide support. My mother-in-law responded with a dumbfounded, "Ha." Justin's proposed last resort was to lie to my mother-in-law that my husband had died and see her reaction. If she showed even a hint of sadness, reflected on her past behavior, and sincerely apologized, then I would consider continuing the support. But if she showed no remorse and still demanded money, I was ready to completely sever ties. I thought even a mother obsessed with money would deeply reflect upon hearing about her son's death. However, the moment she heard it, my mother-in-law started laughing loudly. Ha ha ha. What's so funny? Because if Justin is dead, that means I'll get a share of the inheritance, right? I've been researching it, you know. I started looking into it as soon as I heard Justin got sick. You're entitled to 2/3 of Justin's estate, and the remaining 1/3 is mine. I was dumbfounded. Normally, if one hears their child is sick, they would first look for treatment or useful information. But she had been researching inheritance division. My anger reached its limit, and I was beyond appalled. My husband seemed to feel the same way, and we exchanged glances before he slowly nodded. It was a sign to continue with the plan. Once again, I spoke firmly to my mother-in-law. Mother, did you listen to what I said? Your son Justin has passed away. I've heard you, so what? Aren't you sad your son has died before you? Oh, right. I was worried I wouldn't get the monthly support anymore. But well, if I'm getting the inheritance, that's fine. How can you, for now, just make sure you give me 1/3 of the inheritance, okay? If you try to run off with it all by yourself, I'll never forgive you. The call ended abruptly, and the dial tone echoed in my ears. Casually glancing at my husband, I saw his face turn red with anger, his body shaking. Justin, calm down. Are you okay? As I casually asked my husband, he looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I've decided I should cut ties with such a person. She will surely come here demanding money eventually, so let's wait until then." Yeah, you're right, Justin. Are you really okay with this, cutting ties with your mother like this? Yeah, I am. After hearing what she said on the phone, I have no regrets. Someone who can say such things without batting an eye is not a parent. His eyes were filled with hatred, turning red. I felt the same way. A person who thinks only about money, even over her son's life, is not family. A few days later, as expected, my mother-in-law showed up at our house. I managed the situation for the time being and asked Justin to hide in the next room. Then, my mother-in-law approached me with a fierce look and pressed me aggressively. "Brittany, hand over Justin's inheritance right now." Huh, that topic again? Don't you have anything else to say? Justin's dead, isn't he? What's the point of saying anything now? It's meaningless. You have the nerve to say that when you didn't even visit him in the hospital. Can you even call yourself his parent? You're so noisy. Just give me the inheritance right now. I'll call a lawyer if I have to. At that moment, I realized that talking to her was just a waste of time. Just then, my husband emerged from the next room. Seeing him, my mother-in-law let out a loud gasp as if she'd seen a ghost. "Justin, why? You're supposed to be dead." "Mom, long time no see. Sorry, but the story about me being dead was a lie." "A lie, you say? Why would you say such a disrespectful thing?" "To expose your true nature and confirm it for myself. I wondered how you would manage the monthly financial support if I, your son, were dead. But unfortunately, you turned out to be the worst kind of person, only thinking about money. This situation made that very clear." That's Justin, calling your own parents the worst kind of person. Quiet? I'm cutting ties with a toxic parent like you. As my husband shouted, Sandra stood there open-mouthed, stunned. She hadn't yet come to terms with the reality of being disowned by her own son. "Wait, what do you mean, Justin?" "What I just said. I'm cutting ties. I can't consider someone like you my mother. Don't say that." "So, what about the financial support?" "Why would I support you? You need to find a way to pay off your own debt. We've decided to move away." "Wait, without the support, I won't be able to live." Tears in her eyes, my mother-in-law reached out to my husband. He forcefully brushed her hand away, looked at her coldly, and said, "I don't care about your life. You never once apologized for all the trouble you caused us, did you? Knowing your true nature now, I feel relieved. Don't ever show your face to us again. That's cruel." "Wait, Justin, are you really going to abandon your mother?" Ignoring her words, my husband grabbed her arm and dragged her to the front door. Then he threw her bag and shoes outside and kicked her out of the house. She made a scene outside, but apparently unable to bear the stares of onlookers, she left after a while. Persistent calls and emails came, but we ignored them all. We blocked her number and quickly finished moving. The co-signing of the debt turned out to be something Sandra had fabricated, so the guarantee contract was void, and Justin no longer had any responsibility as a guarantor. Having lost all support from us, my mother-in-law was apparently living a miserable life. It was no surprise since she had used almost all the money we sent for gambling. The remaining debt was substantial, and she spent her days being chased by debt collectors. Working from morning till night, she couldn't gamble anymore. It's unlikely that she will pay off all her debt anytime soon. From now on, she will have to work until her body can no longer move. It's all her own doing. Meanwhile, we are living fulfilling days in our new home. Justin's condition stabilized, and he was able to return to work after recovering. And now there's a new life growing inside me. Next year, our family will grow by one, and we will start a new life. In the future, we want to spend peaceful and happy days as a family of 3. My name is Nancy, and there's a world out there, unknown to me until childhood, when I first glimpsed it on TV. Wild animals roamed landscapes I'd never seen, and people spoke languages foreign to mine. The desire to explore this unknown world up close ignited within me, so boldly. I pursued studies abroad during college. My destination, the very unknown world I yearned to discover. Despite the language barrier, the people thrived, and the land teemed with creatures amidst breathtaking landscapes. Eager for others to share in this wonder, I secured a job at a travel agency. Responsible for tour planning, I drew upon my study abroad experiences, managing everything from site inspections to negotiations. Balancing work and personal life, I married Daniel, whom I met through work. Yet, a problem surfaced with my mother-in-law, Barbara. Firm in her belief that women should remain homemakers post-marriage, Barbara clashed with my modern views. Though I respected her perspective, I couldn't let her dictate my life. To evade living under her roof, I proposed buying a house to Daniel, believing it would alter perceptions. Daniel readily agreed, and we acquired a home. However, Barbara's visits became frequent, disrupting our weekends with noise and unwelcome opinions. Despite the tension, Barbara nonchalantly announced an upcoming trip, assuming I'd join. When I hesitated due to work commitments, she accused me of neglecting family. Feeling cornered, I acquiesced, though begrudgingly. As tension simmered, Barbara, with a sly tone, reminded me of my profession, insisting I handle the trip arrangements. Reluctantly, I obliged, concealing my irritation. The destination? London, where my study abroad journey had unfolded. I still have many connections there. It might be challenging for other regions, but perhaps I can manage London. All right, I'll give it a try. I've already got the plane tickets, so just book the hotel. Odd, you've booked the flight, but not the hotel. I managed to get the tickets by redeeming my card miles for first-class seats. Barbara grinned with evident delight. Daniel, leaning in, remarked, "First class? Seriously, Mom?" "Yes, it's a first-class trip abroad," Barbara confirmed, her grin widening. "We'll depart at 9:30 p.m., so you can work until the last minute," she added cheerfully. Although her enthusiasm seemed genuine, I couldn't ignore the mountain of branded goods piled on the sofa. "I see," I said, catching on to the implication of her joy. Realizing the need to secure accommodations quickly, I decided to leverage my old contacts from my study abroad days to secure a hotel referral. Making a call, I arranged for accommodations for 4 people in 2 rooms. On the day of the trip, the short notice left me unable to take the day off work. Barbara instructed me to meet at the airport by 6:00 p.m. If I wrap up work soon, I can make it, I reassured myself. Suddenly, Barbara called. "Hello, Barbara," I answered. "Nancy, are you done with work?" she inquired. "I'm just leaving the office now, so I'll be at the airport after 6:00 p.m. "Oh, that's too bad," Barbara responded. "Well, we're actually leaving at 6:00 p.m. "Ah, no way," I exclaimed, rushing back to my desk to check the flight schedule. London. I found the 9:30 p.m. flight I initially heard about, but there was also a flight leaving after 6:00 p.m. Could it be this flight after 6:00 p.m.? Yes. So the family is going without you. I felt furious. How could she plan so thoroughly to leave me out? Unforgivable. But showing my frustration would play into Barbara's hands. I had to hide my feelings, even if it meant putting on a brave face. Clenching my teeth, I said to Barbara, "I'm the one who booked the hotel, so Daniel knows the hotel name. You can't do anything now." I could hear Barbara laughing on the other end. Annoyed, I said, "Go without me then." "That's better." "We don't need a useless wife like you," she retorted. "Useless? What do you mean? Don't you know what you neglect? Housework for your job." "Daniel is complaining," she continued. "True, I'm busy with work, but I've never slacked off on housework." "Why would Daniel complain? Can I speak to Daniel?" I asked. Barbara's mocking voice was followed by Daniel's greeting. "Hello, what's up, Nancy?" What do you mean you're complaining about me? I asked him. Just that you're always at work and neglecting me, he responded. Neglect? I prepare meals, clean, and do laundry. But you think you're doing it all yourself, right? That's not true, I retorted. Shouldn't you respect me more? Listen to me? Do things for me, I questioned. I know a wife who supports her husband is valued. It's convenient for the husband, but that's not all there is to a marriage, I continued. I never badmouthed Daniel in public, always praising him, but not when it's just the two of us. But we need to speak our minds when alone. Otherwise, our relationship would fall apart, and I become nothing but a servant to Daniel. Yet he kept complaining about me, I explained. So, you think you can act all high and mighty because you earn more? I challenged him. Not at all, he replied. That annoys me, and you're leaving me behind for that? I asked incredulously. Yeah, consider it stress relief. I'll bring you a souvenir, so don't worry, he assured me. That's not the point, I insisted. Clearly, Daniel was taking me for granted. If that's how it is, I have my own plans. Fine, enjoy the trip. Will do. Bye, I concluded, hanging up. Daniel sounded happy as he hung up. I was livid. I couldn't stand the self-centered Daniel and Barbara. Enjoy your trip without me, but be prepared. Even if you come back crying and apologizing, I won't forgive you. I rushed out of the office with my mobile phone, calling someone. Hey. Hello, it's Nancy. Are you free? I need to talk about that hotel booking. With the trip canceled, I have plenty of time. I'll settle everything now. I ran around with that determination. Then, the next evening, exhausted. I got home, and right then, the phone rang. Hello, Nancy, said Barbara, sounding quite angry. I knew the reason, but pretended not to. Barbara, are you enjoying the trip? I asked. This is no time for that. We can't check into the hotel. Did you have a reservation? You made the reservation, didn't you? Barbara's tone grew more agitated. I canceled it because I wasn't going, I replied. Huh. What then? Where are we supposed to stay tonight? Barbara's frustration was palpable. I don't know, I admitted. Barbara's angry voice came through. But she's in London. Her anger over the phone isn't scary at all. That's tough, being abroad without a hotel. You never know what might happen, I remarked. Wait, help me? Barbara sounded panicked. Then, a faint voice in the background. There's a canceled room. Anthony's negotiating for us to stay there, Daniel's voice reassured. Is that true, Daniel? Barbara demanded. Looks like it'll be fine. You see, Nancy, the room was available because I canceled it, Daniel explained. But this was all part of my plan. My real aim was something else. Glad there was a vacancy. Thought you'd be smug about canceling our hotel, didn't you? I retorted. No, not really, Barbara laughed loudly. Frustrated, aren't you? You can admit it if you're upset. I just canceled it because I wasn't going. Putting on a brave face. How pathetic. Typical of Daniel's useless wife, Barbara continued. Tired of listening to her bragging, I quietly hung up the phone. She probably didn't even notice. I smiled a little at that thought. Anyway, just a few more days to endure. I braced myself and had dinner. A few days later, on my way back from a certain place, Barbara called again. Hello, what's up, Nancy? What's going on again? She asked. Not again. What's wrong with this hotel? I inquired. In short, they stayed in the room I canceled, thanks to Anthony's negotiation. They were supposed to stay for 4 days and check out today, but there was a problem. They were billed £8,000 by the hotel. What's the issue? I asked. It's £2,000 per night, right? That's about $2,500 per night in dollars. Ridiculous. It's for 2 rooms, right? So, about $1,200 per room. You told Daniel it was $300 per room per night. Yes, I did. So it should be $600 for 2 rooms. Why is it 4 times? I was astonished that they stayed without even checking the room rates. Well, I anticipated this, so I set it up accordingly. Anyway, Barbara making a fuss on the phone must be bothering others. I should calm her down. Hey, Nancy, can you hear me? Barbara's voice echoed through the phone. Barbara, can you be a bit quieter? I interjected. Why did you lie? She accused, without reflecting on herself. Exasperated, I began to explain to Barbara. The $300 rate was because I made the reservation. Huh, so because it was last minute? She questioned. I asked a friend who runs a hotel, I replied. A friend of yours? She inquired. Their hotel offers rooms for around $600 for 2 people, I explained. Then why $11,200? Barbara sounded flustered. That's the rate for a really nice room. My friend did me a favor, I clarified. A favor. Barbara sounded taken aback. When I heard from Barbara, there was no time left for the trip, so I told my friend any available room would do. The only vacancy was an expensive suite. My friend kindly gave a discount. I continued. Barbara left me behind without asking. I immediately told my friend the situation and got the room canceled. But I couldn't just leave Barbara and the others without a hotel, so I asked to accommodate them at the regular price if they came. I knew Barbara, having heard about the hotel from Daniel, wouldn't check the price. And I was right. Come on, you should have said that. Yelling won't help. Please make sure to pay, I urged. We're not paying, Nancy. You pay, Barbara retorted. But if you don't pay, you'll be arrested, I warned. Arrested. Of course, troubles abroad can be messy. Are you okay with that? Barbara seemed at a loss for words. As I was about to hang up, thinking I had won, Barbara shouted, "Don't mess with me. You'll regret this when I get back." That's fine, but we're strangers now, right? I responded. Huh. Why? Barbara sounded confused. Well, you said it was a family trip. So since I'm not there, I'm not family, right? I reasoned. Before she could finish, Anthony's voice came from the phone. What's all this yelling about? Be quiet. It's embarrassing. Seizing the opportunity, I called out to him, Anthony, are you okay? How's your cold? I never had a cold in the first place. What's going on? Anthony's voice was filled with concern. It seemed Anthony took the phone from Barbara. His voice grew louder. Nancy, can you explain everything? I can, actually. I told him everything from the beginning. I see. So that's why you didn't come. I'm sorry. I wanted to go. Anthony's voice softened. No, Nancy, you're not at fault. It's Barbara and Daniel. Anthony affirmed. From afar, I heard a whimper. Barbara and Daniel seemed frightened by Anthony's anger. Realizing this, an idea came to me. Should I tell Anthony what Barbara has been doing? I thought so. Anthony, can I tell you something? I asked hesitantly. What is it? Anthony replied. Barbara comes to our house almost every weekend, and when she throws away receipts at our place, there are piles of them, I explained. What receipts? For branded goods? Anthony sounded surprised. It's fine to buy a lot, but please dispose of the receipts at your place. Barbara wasn't just being noisy at our house. She was secretly buying branded goods and disposing of the receipts at our place to hide it from Anthony, thinking she wouldn't get caught this way. Of course, I concluded. I'm a witness, so it's pointless. But it seemed Anthony didn't know. That's interesting to hear. Also, please tell her to stop bad-mouthing you at our place. She talks about me too. Yes, she says you don't earn much. Daniel, too, calls him a useless dad, I think. Anything else? Anthony prompted. So I spilled all my pent-up frustrations to Anthony. Of course, some of it wasn't directly related to Anthony, but he listened silently. At the end, he apologized to me. I'm sorry. Now I understand. Understand what? Why Barbara didn't want to use her card to pay for the hotel. Maybe probably because the cost was much higher than she expected, close to her credit limit. I'm sorry, whoever's voice interjected. That was unforgivable. All your wasteful spending, Barbara. I want a divorce. Please don't do that. Anthony's shouting was followed by Barbara's pitiful voice. He also yelled at Daniel. Daniel, why don't you defend your wife? That's Don't come to my house anymore. Reflect on this alone, Anthony said firmly. Yes, sir. Daniel sounded unusually obedient. Probably, he thought being banished from his parents' house wasn't a big deal. That's when I struck the final blow. So, Daniel, looks like you're going to live alone now, huh? What do you mean? Suddenly, Daniel's voice got louder. He must have grabbed the phone. I moved my phone a bit away and told him the situation. Daniel, I want a divorce. A divorce? You're joking, right? No, I'm serious. I've already sold the house. You sold it? Why would you do that without telling me? That's our house. No, it's my house. But I was paying the mortgage too. No, you weren't. What do you mean? I was giving you part of my salary every month. That was for living expenses. A few hundred isn't enough for the mortgage. Daniel had been giving me a few hundred monthly. It helped with living expenses, but not enough for the mortgage. So I paid it alone. The house was in my name, so there was no room for complaint. This incident made me decide to divorce Daniel. I sold the house full of unpleasant memories of living with him. So, you'll be living alone now. Wait, think it over. No, it's decided. I'll contact you once I find a place. Then, I'll send you the official notice. Official notice? Of course, I'll be claiming compensation in the divorce. Wait for me. Daniel was crying on the other end, but I didn't care. I hung up the phone. After that, Daniel and I divorced following discussions. Anthony actually divorced Barbara too. Barbara, due to her wasteful spending, didn't get any compensation in the divorce and was left on her own. I was just thrown out of the room. Daniel was nearly broke, apparently having spent everything except the few hundred he gave me each month on frivolous things. Now he's living in a rundown apartment and commuting to work. But things might be better for Daniel than Barbara. With no house or money and Daniel's place too small, Barbara had to take a live-in job. She's working hard from morning till night now. As for me, I'm doing great being single. I have more free time and can handle overseas negotiations. I've become a relied-upon figure at work, even hearing talks of a promotion to department head today. I'm busy flying around the world, planning new tour packages.